of the Taos County Board of Commissioners. Call the meeting to order. Clerk, call the roll.
Chairman Pembroke.
Present.
Vice Chair Geikos.
Here.
Commissioner Romero.
Present.
Commissioner Blankenhorn.
Present.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Present.
If everyone would please stand for the pledge and remain standing afterwards for a blessing. Mr. O'Donnell.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And this morning we have Pastor David Romero from the Church of Yahweh Kimano to get us started off in the right foot. Thank you.
Father, we just thank you for your love. Thank you for everyone present. And I just ask a blessing on this meeting, that you would lead them by your Spirit and give them wisdom and understanding, and decisions that they make, Father, would be for the benefit of all. And I thank you for each person present, and just bless them today, Father, in Yeshua's name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, you sound like you could shout, you know.
No, it's something allergy. No, it's all allergies. Next item is approval of the agenda. Commissioners, motion to approve.
I'll second, Mr. Chairman.
Motion and a second. Clerk, call the roll.
Vice Chair Geikos.
Yes.
Commissioner Romero.
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenhorn.
Yes.
Chairman Pembroke.
Yes. Item 5 is citizens' concerns. If anyone in the audience wishes to address the commission on something that's not on the agenda, or let us know what's going on around town, I invite you to take up to 5 minutes and talk to us at this time. Seeing none, we thank you all for being here with us this morning. Item 6 is a public hearing for discussion, consideration, and decision regarding the approval of a restaurant beer and wine license. The license is being requested by the applicant, Barbara Rosa, LLC, doing business as ACEQ Restaurant at 480 New Mexico 150 Arroyo Seco 87514. It's application number 998670. Mr. Wagner? Yes, go ahead. This is a public hearing, and so at this time I'll ask the clerk to swear you in.
Can you raise your right hand? Do you swear and affirm under oath and penalty of lawful perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct?
Yes,
Please state your name.
Michael Wagner.
Good morning. Thank you for
Morning.
being here.
Thank you.
What's up?
I'm applying for a beer and wine license. I currently am the general manager of the restaurant for the Taos Restaurant Group. It is in operation currently. And then hopefully upon approval, I will be purchasing said restaurant from the current owners.
Okay. Bob, is everything in order?
Everything appears in order in the application.
Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, we have to have, I believe, a public
Right.
thing.
If there's any public comments, please come forward and address Mr. Wagner or the commission at this time. Seeing none?
Oh, just for a question, when I made this Chairman.
Oh,
All right.
hearing none, I guess we close the public hearing at this time, and I'll open it up for comments from the commission. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Yes, the old Trinity Parish Church, how close is the restaurant to that?
The restaurant is outside of the boundary from the main church. I actually have a letter from the father stating that they do hold a couple services at the old historic church. Those are only a few times during the summer and not regular services.
And what is the distance, please?
From the historic or from the current?
From the historic.
From the historic, I believe it's 355 5 feet.
Oh, so it is outside. All right, thank you.
It is, it's very close though.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I believe there is a letter from Father Malachi in the packet.
There is. Anything else, Commissioners?
Affidavit of Father Malachi, that's the one that's probably the closest, I would say.
Correct.
Mr. Chairman, if there aren't any other questions or comments from the public or any of the commissioners, I'll go ahead and move that we approve license being requested by the applicant, Barbarossa LLC DBA as ACPQ Restaurant at 480 New Mexico, 150 Aurora Seco, New Mexico, application number 98670 by Mr. Michael Wagner. Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Clerk call the roll.
Commissioner Gagos?
Yes.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blakenhart?
Yes.
Chairman Thunder?
Yes. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Item 7A is a presentation regarding hospital benchmarks and transfer data from Mr. Bill Patten.
Good morning. Happy day after 4th of July. Thank you for the opportunity to come and give you the most recent update as it relates to our report card. I'll go through a number of the items, happy to answer questions on any of them you might have. And then I wanted to spend a few minutes at the end of my presentation talking about a project that we're looking at, designation as a critical access hospital. I think that that's an important conversation for us to have. So to start out on the patient satisfaction, you can see the numbers, and as I've noted in previous presentations, we have not been satisfied with our current vendor. Avatar is their name. And so effective the 1st of July, we have a contract with a new national company, Press Gaming. So it will take us several months before we see the change related to these new questionnaires flowing through the Press Gaming system. But we'll be anxious to see both the number of reports that we get, the returns, as well as the numbers, so I'll keep you posted on that. Employee satisfaction, for my evaluation for next year, we're using a baseline that we got from the satisfaction survey that we did in December, which was 82. And so my goal for this next year is going to be an employee satisfaction rate of at least 85. Keep in mind that our 82 was 12 points higher than the national average based on the vendor that we use. So 85 is, I think, an appropriate goal. The board will be approving all of my goals at the July board meeting, and once they do that, then I'll report on those to you so that you can see the big picture things the board is evaluating me on. The one thing that I think is important to note on the employee satisfaction is that we entered into wage negotiations with our union 2 weeks ago, and we're able to complete those negotiations in 2 days. The union reported a high level of satisfaction with both the process that we used as well as the outcome. And if you remember when we were going through the mill levy conversation, one of the things that we said was that we didn't see it as an either or. We were trying to address both the capital equipment and building repair issues and deal with our employee issues. So in March, we gave our employees what we called a thank you payment. And organization-wide, that accounted for almost $300,000 that we paid our employees. When you factor that into the mix, the raises that our employees will get are going to be a little bit over 8%. Now, it's important to note that this is not an across-the-board raise. What we found is that we had at least 3 different pay scales, a huge mishmash of how we approach compensation. And so what we have implemented now with the union's agreement is a very structured, very standardized salary system that is based on the market. So we use data from the New Mexico Hospital Association, and we also looked at data from surrounding states and national trends. The union will actually vote on the agreement this Thursday. The board will be asked to approve the agreement this week as well. Assuming that both parties agree to it, then it would be effective as of the 17th of July, and the employees would actually see the raises in their paychecks on the 5th of August. So we're anxious for the employees to get educated on this agreement. I think it will feed into the improving employee satisfaction that we're seeing. On the medical staff turnover front, not much to report there. I think I've already reported that Dr. Martha Morgan will be leaving us at the end of July. We have made an offer to another OBGYN, and I expect to have that negotiation completed this week. So hopefully we won't have very much of a gap between Dr. Morgan and the new physician. We have hired one ED doctor, Dr. Sarah Bush. She was a University of New Mexico trained emergency physician. She'll be starting with us in October, and then we have a doctor coming for a site visit this Friday, also an emergency doctor. If we're able to get her hired, then the number of locums that we're needing will go down significantly. The next two or three items I'll lump together. We ended the year on a very positive note. A lot of this was due to a windfall that we got from the state of New Mexico in what is called the Safety Net Care Pool program. So we received $1 million that we were not expecting from the Safety Net Care Pool program. So if you were to factor out $1 million from the numbers, you could see that we would have had a loss for the year. It would have been less than we had budgeted. We had budgeted a loss of a little over $600,000 for last year. So nice surprise both for the month and for the year. It's important to note that that windfall is not something that we expect to see year after year. So when folks say, well, hey, wait a minute, why did you need the mill levy? I would say it's because of the unpredictability as well as the backlog. The related numbers are the three below that, the days cash, the days in AR, days in AP. Days cash, we're finally approaching 30 days, and 30 is still way too low. 50 to 70 is the minimum that a healthy hospital should have. But compared to when I got here, when we were measuring days cash in single digits, 27 feels pretty good. And at the same time, we've been much better about being able to pay our bills in a regular fashion, so we're down. Actually, with the run that was done last week, I think we're closer to 40 days. The goal is to keep your days in AR and your days in AP close to each other so that as the money is going in, then the amount you're spending matches. So financially, we're in a much better position. Not out of the woods, I'm not meaning to send them that message, but much improved. So I'll just pause and see if there are any other metrics on the report card that you'd like me to speak to before I talk briefly about critical access.
Just reminding you, you're on a record pace of transfers again, but there's no sense in bringing it up anymore.
We continue to work on it.
I don't see that.
It's something that I can tell you that it is at the top of our minds every day. It's not something that
It's at the top of the minds of our EMS. Anything else, Commissioner? Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes, who is your new surveyor? You said you're not continuing with Avatar.
Press-Gain,
Could you spell that?
P-R-E-S-S, and that's one more, Ganey, G-A-N-E-Y, is the second word. They're one of the largest national satisfaction survey vendors in the country.
Do you have your clinic open?
Which clinic?
Clinic by El Centro.
So the Durham clinic is under,
No, I mean you.
primary care.
Yes.
So we have a full-time nurse practitioner, a part-time nurse practitioner that are in practice there. Dr. Cardesis is going to be transitioning from a one-day-a-week Suboxone clinic to a full-time primary care practice, including one day a week of Suboxone. Pediatrics has not started yet there. That's the one thing that we're still working on.
are you saying Dr. Cordova will be at your clinic full-time?
Yes,
Oh, that's great. And what's the name of your clinic?
I think it's very creative, Taos Primary Care or something like that.
So it is open?
Yes.
Okay. I have gotten some reports. Can you tell us about your new staff and management level? And I understand you passed up some locals and that you hired management from out of town.
So I think you're referring to my chief nursing officer. So Anna Beta retired as of the 3rd of June. We went through a process that included external and internal candidates. It was a very participatory process. However, throughout the process, I made it clear that while I was asking for input, ultimately the decision would be mine. And so factoring all the different input that I received and advice, as well as my own perspective, we selected one of the external candidates, made an offer, and she declined that offer. She had 2 other offers in addition to ours. She had an offer to be a chief nursing officer at a small hospital and then to be a vice president of quality at a large hospital. She chose, for personal reasons, to take one of the other offers. So then we had ruled out the other external candidate that we had brought in. So then I had my internal candidate who has never served as a chief nursing officer in a hospital. And it was my sense that at this point in time, more than any other factor, I need that level of experience, senior level of experience. So I asked Teresa to serve as the acting chief nursing officer. I told her that I want her on my team and that I hope that at some point in the future she will be able to be our chief nursing officer, just not today.
And what is her last name, please?
Valeria.
Okay.
And so we have started the external search again. And I'm not at the point where I'm doing interviews yet. I'm still collecting resumes. It takes a while to find the pump.
I'm also talking about your, is it purchasing or inventory?
Right.
You
So
hired someone from out of town instead of promoting locals?
I'm not aware that we had any internal candidates for the purchasing director position.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Chairman. Bill, do you have a patient satisfaction goal?
We haven't locked that down for next year. With the change in vendor, we're uncertain how much variability that is going to introduce into the numbers. And so we're still waiting to see what that final number would be. We have to have it finalized by the July board meeting. So
Your goal for the coming year?
correct. Correct. And part of the reason why we have uncertainty there is the number of returns we've been getting with Avatar over the last few months has been so low that we're not confident that the numbers mean anything.
But once you get confident, if the levels are lower than your goal, what are the kinds of things that you do?
So one of the first things we have to do is to educate our patients on what the survey tool looks like. The one from Avatar actually looked like junk mail. And so what we found was that many people were actually throwing it away without even opening it. So we need to make sure with Prestini that it stands out that it's something from Holy Cross. We're also going to educate our patients before they leave the hospital and actually show them this is what it's going to look like when it comes in the mail. So please take a few minutes to fill it out.
But on operations, like assuming they figure out how to fill it out and they do so in sufficient numbers, then how do you address it in operations?
So what we're doing is department by department looking at pieces of the survey. So not the whole survey relates to imaging or to lab, but there are several questions. And so we're using those questions at the department level to evaluate the leaders of the departments.
And what's your best idea on transfers, like how to limit them? An initiative that you're thinking of?
It's a combination of care provided by the ED docs, by the hospitalists, and by our surgeons. Those three working together are the ones that control it. And maybe what I should do to show that some of this isn't a function of within our control is to bring a list of diagnoses for a period of time so that you can see that for some of these transfers, this is not care that's appropriate to be kept here, as opposed to something that we could have done, so that you can see that. And then it's a question of, should we be adding that level of care?
Yeah, the key to that really is that those that don't have to be transferred, because we can't provide all of the services that a big city hospital does. So it's that other portion that.
Yes, the discretionary. And so maybe by providing additional detail, because I appreciate the sensitivity, and if it was something that I could fix today, believe me, I would. But
I haven't seen any progress.
well, cardiac is an area where there has been some progress since we have brought on Dr. Constantine, Dr. Ismail. I had a meeting last week with the cardiologists and with the physicians from Taos Medical Group, looking at what our next step is to further improve the care available as it relates to cardiology. The thinking is that we need to recruit an outpatient cardiologist that would complement what Dr. Constantine and Dr. Ismail are doing within the hospital.
We went down to Hobbs for our conference, and they have a billboard in Hobbs that shows ER waiting time, digital ER waiting times. I'm not suggesting you put up a billboard, but it's obvious that it's an issue.
It's been talked about, and folks are reluctant to put that up until our number is something that we're not so embarrassed about.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Khan, thank you for being here this morning. Good morning. The funding that you get from the state of New Mexico, how often will that occur?
So we currently get paid every quarter under the Safety Net Care Pool program. And then at the end of every year, we reconcile, we do an audit that compares what our costs were against what we get paid. And then there's a determination whether they owe us money or we owe them money. And this year, our numbers were based on the initial application from 2014. And that's where the $1 million, our volumes had gone up, but our payments had not. So we'll continue to get paid an estimated payment every quarter, and then at the end of the year, it's reconciled.
And we're fresh out of the 4th of July weekend. How did it go this weekend?
It was a busy weekend. I reviewed the stats. It seemed like ER was somewhere around 50 patients a day.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Were you able to send any of your staff to the June 18th meeting in Albuquerque regarding Medicaid and how to reimburse for drug addiction patients who come in? The one that Dr. Lindstrom suggested the hospital go to?
There are so many meetings. I know we sent a team that was looking at Medicaid data, whether it was the one on the 18th, but we did have a representative there. Is that the park/snack program?
I'm sorry, I don't know. It was just to brief hospitals on how they can apply for Medicaid for people come in for alcohol treatment and severe cases of drug addiction.
So I can verify, but I know that for any meeting that's involving reimbursement, we try and have someone there.
All right, thank you. And the locums, you had when is your fiscal year? What's your cycle?
June, May.
So it's similar to ours then, except a month. Okay, so the locums, 100 locums, what's your goal? Reducing those locums?
We haven't said that. That would also be a number that we'll present to the board in July. So the hiring that we're doing in the emergency department, assuming that that's successful, that will significantly cut into the number. But this also includes traveling nurses. And I can tell you that we've had a number of travelers of late because we've had permanent nurses that are out on family medical leave issues.
So how many locums do you have now?
So for the month of May, it would have been 10.
10, okay. And the hospital, explain to me your financial setup. You have a number of subsidiaries. Those would include who? The medical group, surgical specialties, the clinic, whatever happens to the midwifery center that you staffed or you bought.
So corporately, Taos Health Systems is the corporate umbrella under which all operations are conducted. And then the simplest way to describe it would be that there are two divisions. One would be the hospital, and one would be Taos Professional Services. And then within Taos Professional Services would be things like the Women's Health Institute, Taos Surgical Services, Hydropathology, Taos Primary Care, Taos Pediatrics, all of those services. The birthing center is part of the WHI, Women's Health Institute. So the sequence as far as getting the birth center open, when we took it over, it would be almost 2 years August, we found that it wasn't certified at that time. And so our ability to bill in an uncertified center was very limited. So we began efforts to get this center certified. It actually was inspected last September. And we've been recruiting for a third nurse midwife. We need the third so that we can provide coverage both in the hospital and in the birthing center. The third midwife just started about 2 weeks ago. So we received communication from the certifying agency that they wanted to come back and do a re-inspection. But because we haven't been providing care, some of the data that they need to look at doesn't exist. Number of deliveries. You can't report on number of deliveries if you're not doing deliveries in the birth center. So at this point, it looks like we're going to have to file for a new application, and they'll be back late this summer, early fall. But we're planning to move forward with the birthing center. The next step in the process is we have to hire birth assistants. And so we're defining what the skill set for those would be, and we're looking to get 2 positions posted for that.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Guy.
Mr. Patten, I guess I could say that I do appreciate that you're looking to find means of getting more patient satisfaction reporting and your employee satisfaction as well. It's been over a year, and I think that one of the questions and concerns from this commission was the transfers. And I do have a lot of heartburn in that, wearing a dual hat as Mayor of Cuesta, and the stress that it puts on staff in the Red River and Cuesta area when there's transfers out of Taos with the county EMS doing that and stretching everybody on a very thin line. There was discussion, I can't recall what month it was when we had this presentation on the transfers, that you would sit down with EMS staff and Mr. Gonzalez about what to do to make this kind of drop from, 30 transfers a month to 15. It seems like it's increased, and as well as Chairman Fambro, this is the ticker for me. I mean, I understand, and I appreciate that you guys are working to keep your numbers in order and having that balance, but at the end of the day, it's still killing our staff, it's killing the staff in the surrounding areas, and until you figure out how to fix that problem, that's going to be my number one issue. I'm going to care less how everything else works out in your hospital, but right now it's how these transfers are not making it satisfying our constituency and our staff. So, I mean, I don't know what other way we can get this addressed. I would expect that this commission will be able to make sure that we direct staff to have a meeting with you and EMS, EMTs, paramedics, whoever is available to sit with you and talk about how this can be resolved, because I don't want to have another month come in and we have 33 transfers again. I mean, that was the stickler we had when you first walked in here and you did your presentation of what you were going to make changes. And I appreciate the changes you made, but this one is just kind of floating out there, and it seems like nobody wants to pay attention to it. We need to nip that, and I think that what your presentation will be done next is going to be kind of hard for me to digest unless, this picture gets painted a little different.
You're on a pace right now to be over 2 a day, 840. When you used to offer different services that the citizens who needed, there weren't that many transfers. I'm sick of it.
Mr. Chairman, there's someone in the audience.
When it's appropriate, can I please ask a question? I don't know you.
Okay, go ahead.
No?
Please state your name for the record.
Oh, sure. My name is Claire DeGaia.
Can you come to the podium, please?
Sure. Good morning, and my name is Claire DeGuy. I live in Taos, and I'm a retired registered nurse, and I'm scheduled to be a doula at birth, July 26th timing. So my question is, in regards to the midwifery center, I understand that you just got this person hired 2 weeks ago, but what I've been told by this pregnant mama is that now they have to go through the whole process again. I'm wondering if there's any way that an extension can be requested for the application or whatever that's already been filed. Because there are several pregnant mothers in this town that would love to be able to go to the midwifery center. And I don't know what you folks could do, but I think it's important that it get open as soon as possible, and thank you.
Commissioner Blackenberg?
Yeah, okay, thank you, Chairman. Well, I like the idea of coming in next time with a little bit more detail on the transfer so that, we can see the ones that there's nothing we can do about. And maybe, maybe you're going to have to just set a realistic goal, if that's possible, and let us know what to expect. And I know you're going to talk a little bit about the change in your organization, the potential change, and maybe just weave in how that might affect transfer.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. With the midwifery center, you bought this the same time you closed the clinic in Penasco. Just commenting on that. And I was wondering if our attorney could give us the timeline on when the mill levy funds will be accessed, and when they show up in property taxes.
Commissioner O'Donnell, it's more of a finance question, but I do have a general understanding. And that money will come in as property taxes are paid. So the first large slug of money from property taxes obviously comes in November, and then there's another one in the spring. There's bits and pieces that are paid by various people in between those two, but the two big chunks are in November and then again in the spring.
Thank you.
So if there are no other questions, I should shift topics and talk about the critical access designation conversation that's taking place. For a number of years, Holy Cross has looked at the question of whether converting to critical access status made sense from a financial perspective. And up until the most recent analysis, it never did. There were other payment structures in place that offset any benefit we would have from the critical access reimbursement model. This past year, the numbers changed, and it appears as if the main reason they changed is some of the revenue that we saw from the Affordable Care Act related to meaningful use has now gone away. And once that has gone away, then the critical access model shows benefit. So under our current structure, our current costs, our current volumes, if we were to be a critical access hospital, we would see an additional $900,000 in reimbursement from Medicare. And this is a Medicare-only conversation. And so, recognizing that $900,000 changes, positive changes in reimbursement don't come along every day, we want to take a look at this. We want to look at what the impact would be operationally to services, and we want to look at what it would be on our patients, because there are changes as far as patient responsibility. So we are walking through a process with our employees, educating them. I have a session tomorrow with the department directors, and then over the next 3 weeks we'll have sessions with our employees where we're educating them on what being critical access actually means, and then we're fielding questions so that we can make sure that we don't leave any question unanswered. We're also sending out 3 teams to other critical access hospitals that are at least as big as us or bigger, so that we can look at how they were able to accommodate the limitations that the critical access system imposes, both financially and operationally. At the end of the day, it really comes down to 2 issues. Overall, this is a change in how we get paid. It's not so much a change in how we provide care. And so there aren't things that it says you can't do. So an example would be, it doesn't say you can't do OB, it doesn't say you can't do surgery, but it doesn't require those services. Services that are required would include laboratory, imaging, ED, and inpatient. Those are the services that are actually required. Beyond that, we can decide what makes sense for us. As this conversation has moved forward, there has been no talk about how do we cut services under this model. It is how do we use this model to sustain services that are otherwise still financially challenged. So there is no talk about somehow cutting services. Some people call the critical access model a Band-Aid hospital. That's not what we are, that's not what we aspire to be, but we still need to shore up our bottom line. So the two issues that really need to be studied, the one is, it's called a 96-hour rule, and it has two different pieces to it. Piece one says that when a patient is admitted, the admitting doctor has to certify that that patient will either be discharged or transferred within 96 hours based on the clinical picture that is presented to them at the time of admission. Part two is that 96-hour limit itself. And it is not a hard number, it is an average. So it's of all of our patients, an average length of stay. So any one patient could stay more than that. So an example would be, patient comes in with pneumonia, and the doctor says, I think 3 days of antibiotics is going to be what this patient needs. On day 2, they recognize that the patient is sicker than they had anticipated. They document that in the chart. The patient then can stay for 6 days, and there's not a problem. The other thing that you need to keep in mind when it relates to the 96-hour rule is we will have access to what are called swing beds. Right now, all of our beds are licensed as acute care beds. We have found that we have a swing bed license that has never been used. Swing bed can be thought of as a step down, a variation of a nursing home type care. And so if a patient comes in and they need 3 days of acute care and then 2 more days of swing, we can do that now without having to transfer them to the living center. The way it works right now is when they need that step down level of care, we transfer them out of the building. In this model, if we were to pursue it, we would be able to keep them not only in the hospital, but literally in the same bed. All of our beds would be licensed as swing. So when I talk about discharged or transferred, the transfer could easily be internal from an acute status to a swing status. So the 96-hour rule is one of the big questions that we both need to understand and make sure we do good education on. And then the other one is what I call the 20% copay rule. And these are rules that are spelled out for us from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. So this is the rules that Medicare gives us. In our current status as a PPS hospital, prospective payment system hospital, we get paid based on the patient's diagnosis. So regardless of how much we invest in the patient, we get paid a lump sum. And the critical access model, we get paid an adjusted cost. They know that our cost per unit is higher because our units is lower. And so they pay us cost. So the rules are that we have to bill a patient in PPS 20% of what Medicare pays us. So I'll use this example. We bill a patient $2,000 and Medicare pays us $600. And that's not an unusual amount. $600 off a $2,000 bill is pretty standard. The patient would then be billed $120, 20% of that $600. In the critical access model, we have to bill 20% based on the charge, not the payment. So instead of 20% of 600, it's 20% of 2,000. So it's $400 is what the patient's responsibility would be. So big difference between 120 and 400. If the patient has secondary insurance, whether it's Medicaid, whether it's Humana, Cigna, whatever the secondary would be, secondaries pick up that copayment. So the patient wouldn't see any change. But and we're estimating right now 15 to 20% of our Medicare patients do not have secondary. So then that would be additional out of pocket. And so that's part of what we want to research as we send these teams. How are other hospitals dealing with that? Are they adjusting it related to charity? how are they doing that? Because we understand for Medicare patients, that change in the 20% can be significant. And so we're not going into it saying, oh, it's no big deal. It's a big deal, and we want to make sure we understand it before we make a change at this time. So while we don't imagine nearly as intense a campaign as we used during the mill levy, we do imagine a similar process, that we're going to educate our folks internally, and then we are going to reach out to the community. I've already talked with Mr. Cordova and have suggested that it would be a good idea for me to come and give a more in-depth presentation to this board. Same thing with the city, with Cuesta, so that the leadership within the communities can understand. And then we would also do events where we would invite people in. We would go to the Rotary, we would go to Lions Club, those sorts of things, trying to make sure that people understand the pros and the cons related to this decision. So originally, just to be candid, I thought that this was a no-brainer. I've worked in 3 different critical access hospitals before. I actually converted one hospital from a PPS hospital to critical access. And so my level of understanding was such that I knew that this is largely a payment change. It is not a care change. And not wanting to leave money on the table, I thought, let's move this process forward quickly, get the benefit of it sooner than later. And so until you actually sign on the dotted line saying, we're going to convert, it's all still what if. So from my point of view, I thought, let's get this ball rolling. And I originally had suggested that I could ask the board to move in that direction back in June. It became clear that my understanding is different than everyone else's, and that I should not artificially push this forward. So Dr. Young asked me in a meeting recently what my timeline is, and I said there is no timeline. We're going to take the time we need in order to understand it and educate well. There are issues about perception. So I had a conversation with Mr. Cordova as it relates to our lease. Our lease speaks to the provision of acute care services. And so the question would be, in a critical access model, would the lease need to be modified? My position would be it would not, because it's not changing the level of care, it's changing how we're paid. But that's a conversation we should have. And rather than having it as an OS moment, oh shoot, just before we would be ready to convert, we should do that proactively. So those are all things that we're doing now as we walk through this. But I've been very open. I'm going to advocate for this because I think it's a good thing for our organization. I don't think there's any downside on the care side of things, and I think there's a huge upside on the financial side of things. And I believe it's part of my job to offer options like that to my board. Ultimately, this is a decision that the board will need to make, but I will not ask them to make it until I have a sense that we have reached consensus, both within the organization and within the community. So with that, I'll pause and see what questions I can answer.
Mr. Malone, have you researched to see if this change in status is allowable under our lease and agreement?
I have not. I first raised the question last week with Leandro, who conveyed it to Mr. Patten, because I knew that the lease said acute care. It says that it has to be a general acute care hospital. Whether you can be both an acute care hospital and a critical access hospital, I don't know the answer to. Like I said, I raised that for the first time last week.
Mr. Chair, I have a question, Mr. Patten. There's got to be some trade-off. Do we know what that trade-off is from turning from what we are today and what you want us to be in the future? It doesn't seem like you get a $90,000 reimbursement without having some trade that's going to happen down the road. And if the swinging bed was still or was in effect, nobody knew that it was available. How come we hadn't used it? Why are we? What's the reason why we're trying to figure out how to make it work now?
So I can't tell you why we had it and never used it, and it doesn't appear as if we never used it. But I can tell you that moving forward, even if we don't convert to critical access, we're going to implement a swing bed program. That's something that we hear loud and clear from our medical staff, that they think would give them additional options. So regardless of where the conversation with critical access goes, we are going to start a swing bed program.
Would that reduce the amount of transfers? And in addition to that, you mentioned it as an example that if somebody had pneumonia and after day 2, there was the option of keeping them an additional 6 days, but then at the same time, there's the option of just saying, send them out, right? I mean,
That's right, and that's going to be dependent on the medical staff.
And that's going to, but it's going to be also dependent as to staying on the 96-hour window that we just start sending people out after day 2 without saying, well, you know, do we really want to keep it for day 6? I mean, I just, you know, we're going to throw all the ifs out there. We might as well throw every if out there because there's going to be a lot of that. And instead of just looking at something blindly, you know, I've always been a person to see the glass half full, but now I'm looking at it half empty because I've been expecting it to be full by now, you know. So, you know, if you can answer that, what's the trade-off going to be? And then, maybe, you know, I'm glad you're going to think about using the swinging bed practice, and I still just don't see how the 96-hour rule or the limit is going to benefit the community as a whole without people getting transferred, and that just being an easier window for the hospital to transfer people out. I mean, instead of that the same day being a transfer or the second day, hey, let's just hold them until the 3rd day and then transfer them. We satisfy the commission, we satisfy the community to an extent. I mean,
I would tell you that fundamentally, care that's provided locally is the best kind of care. And so that's what I am committed to. At the same time, I don't see this as an all or nothing. So I'll give you an example. The gentleman that we had from Cody, Wyoming, West Park Hospital, which is a critical access hospital that has volumes that are greater than ours, came down and did education sessions for our medical staff, for our board, for our department leaders. And he was able to demonstrate that for the most part, I'll be clear, for the most part, they've been able to live within the 96-hour rule. He gave a specific example, bowel resections. A bowel resection surgery, you know going into it that that patient is going to need to be in the hospital 6 to 9 days. So his point was they have stopped doing bowel resection surgery for that very reason, because it exceeds the 96-hour rule. They know that going in. But the volume of bowel resection surgeries is quite low. And so they felt like that was an appropriate compromise, if you will. We're in the process of looking at our data to see what diagnoses are going to bump up against the 96-hour rule on a regular basis. And one of them I used as an example. Pneumonia is one, sepsis is two. From the preliminary review of the data that we've done, it looks like those are the two that we would struggle with as it relates to the 96-hour rule. So rather than answer this question theoretically, we want to go to places that are larger than us, have volumes greater than ours, have service mixes greater than ours, to see how they match those limitations, the 96-hour rule, with keeping care local. Because I can tell you, that's a theme that's in every community. It's not unique to us. Everyone wants to keep as many of their patients as they can locally. And so we've looked at whether or not we can visit the hospital in New Mexico. There are 9 critical access hospitals in New Mexico. Only one of them is close to our volume or service mix, Neuter. Their inpatient volume is about half of ours. So it's my sense that they're not a good example. We want someone who has inpatient volume at least as great as ours, because that actually translates into the question of our patients being transferred or not. The lower number of inpatients, the lower number of transfers. We don't think that's going to be instructive. So we're looking at right now at Cody, Wyoming, at a site in Arizona, and then we're going to look at southern Colorado to see if we can find a 3rd site. The teams will involve a hospitalist, an ED doctor, a biller, a nurse, a case manager, and someone from the leadership team. The teams will get together and we'll develop a list of questions. So all 3 teams are asking the same thing as they go out. And then once they come back, we'll collect the data and we'll continue the conversation. You're exactly right. There is a trade-off. They pay you differently and they have little different rules as far as how you provide care. But having worked in 3 of them, one of which had a similar service mix, where I was in Wyoming, we did orthopedic surgery. And orthopedics in general are are going to be two of the areas that would be the most challenged by the 96-hour rule. And I can tell you that the number of transfers we had because of the 96-hour rule was very, very small. We did transfer. I'm not going to mislead you, but it's a question of how many transfers, and I don't mean this the wrong way, but how many transfers can we justify in order to have this increased reimbursement? At the end of the day, that's going to be the balance we're going to try and achieve.
So you're saying that once you have these three teams and you guys identify what's going to be acceptable into the hospital, then it automatically doesn't go to the hospital and do a transfer. You're going to say you can't see that patient and they got to keep going further south.
That may be one of the options. I don't think that there's going to be a single set of options, except for a limited menu of diagnoses. So the bowel resection would be one. So if someone comes in and needs to have a complicated bowel resection, I would predict that for most of those patients, we'll say, we shouldn't do that surgery here. We're going to transfer you.
And that information we passed on to our paramedics, EMTs, people are going to be out there in the field
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
So that they'll know, I mean,
Yes.
I'll fly for life because this isn't going to be something that can be handled in the house.
Correct.
Thank you, Chairman, Commissioners. Mr. Patten, as you know, we recently passed a resolution on the public health crisis for drug and alcohol addiction, and in that we named partners, including Holy Cross Hospital. And we're still hoping, I'm still hoping that when you get patients who come in that need detox, and they need a 7-day detox, which you are allowed to do, which you can bill if you put this in place. I'm concerned that this 92-hour, 96-hour rule will impact our ability to do the necessary procedures of the 7-day detox, medical detox, strictly medical detox, which we need the hospital to be responsible for. I'm concerned about that because we are needing your assistance to help solve this problem we have with detox. I have that concern. Also, if out-of-pocket is going to be an additional 15 to 20% for those who do not have their secondary supplemental insurance for Medicaid, then what I hear you saying is these patients may come back to us in the indigent fund requesting assistance. And so I see that is a possible impact. I see our plans to hopefully work with you in detox. That could be an issue with the 7-day. So those are just my concerns right now.
And if I may respond, the detox I don't think is going to factor into the 96-hour conversation because the beds that we're looking at wouldn't be part of our licensed beds. So the model that's currently being considered, where we're going to have the 8-bed unit, 2 of which would be medical detox beds, 6 of which would be long-term recovery beds. In that model, those aren't part of our licensed beds.
I'm actually talking about detox in the hospital, Mr. Patten. Critical for those who cannot detox in the other facility we're going to open. Talking about the severe cases of heroin addicts, severe alcohol abuse that need the supervision of a doctor for 7 days before they move into this facility. I'm talking about your ability to detox people in the hospital, which you can do. You do not have to have separate beds. As Dr. Lindstrom said, they just need to be admitted for high blood sugar, high blood pressure. You admit them, you see that they are addicts or need alcohol detox, you keep them in the hospital for 7 days until they detox. Then they move to this other facility we're trying to open. That's what I'm talking about. Thank you.
Commissioners? All right.
So look forward to continued conversations.
Can I Google critical access and learn about it? I need to find more about it.
And I'd be happy to send you a link that we have given to our employees, if that would be useful.
I would appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Okay, moving on to item B, presentation on Spay and Neuter initiatives in Taos County, Dr. Audra Scully. Thanks for being here this morning.
Sure.
I'd like to thank the commissioners for inviting me to speak and present today. Commissioner O'Donnell. Today we also have in the audience, just so that you know, Executive Director of the Santa Fe Animal Shelter and Humane Society, Mary Martin, is kind enough to drive up to Santa Fe. She also brought someone else that's a colleague in her industry, Dan Morrison, ran a shelter in LA for 37 years. So I will answer questions as I give my presentation, but if I run into something that I don't know, perhaps experts in the audience, Mary Martin and Dan Morrison, can also contribute. Okay, I just want to give her a second. Okay. Is Taos really fixing the pet overpopulation problem? In my opinion, the short answer is no. And this conversation is to address how we can make it so it does fix the problem. So my name is Dr. Audra Scully. I'm a PhD in biology. I'm a basic research scientist. I got my PhD from the UCSD and the Salk Institute. Did my postdoctoral research at the Scripps Research Institute. I worked in drug and pharmaceutical industry after that, and then I took a job at Howard Hughes Medical Institute. As a side thing, as a hobby volunteering for my community, for over 5 years I volunteered at the San Diego County Shelter from 2008 to 2013. This is an open door shelter, so we can't turn people away. We can't pick and choose what animals you take in. So their save rates nowadays are about 85% for dogs and 70% for cats. It was less than 50% for cats when I volunteered there. But that is the county shelter. They've taken over 30,000 animals a year. I also volunteered at the Helen Woodward Animal Shelter. This is also in San Diego, California. It is more akin to the Humane Society of Taos in that their save rates are really high. They don't have to take everything that comes in through the door. They actually, in terms of Helen Woodward, they're not allowed to take in strays. And it's considered no-kill. So typically no-kill is considered if you have a greater than 90% save rate. You know, there's some debate over that, but in general, that's what it is. I also fostered over 130 cats and kittens, not all at once. It took a number of years. And not to make myself the crazy cat lady, I took the pictures of my cats up here, but to point out their spay-neuter time frame. So on the left is Willow. She was spayed at 14 weeks before coming home to me for adoption. She was spayed by a California rescue group. In California, you have to spay and neuter. Animals from shelters are rescued before they go home. So that was from a small rescue group. The one on the right is from the San Diego County Shelter. She was one of my fosters, so she was not spayed while she was fostered with me, but as soon as she was 8 weeks old, I expressed an interest in adopting her. She was spayed by the San Diego County Shelter. And in the middle, that's an example of TNR, trap, neuter, return. So this was a feral cat that came to my yard. I actually paid to get him fixed, and eventually he came inside with me. So he's an example of TNR. Feral cats are probably your #1 source of kittens in any community. So I've been present in Taos County since 1987 when my father decided to buy property up in San Cristobal, District 2. And I've spent more time in here in the last few years. I have volunteered and donated thousands of dollars to the Humane Society of Taos since 2008. But I stopped in 2015 after a $5,000 donation that I engaged in was not spent as I intended for kittens spay neuter between the ages of 2 and 4 months of age prior to adoption. So I started Planned Parenthood Taos. This is a nonprofit, and I started it in 2014. My focus is spay neuter, and we'll get into why I think spay neuter is so important. But my money primarily for this nonprofit to promote and offer spay neuter is through myself, an anonymous donor from Santa Fe, chooses to remain anonymous, and the Zimmer Feline Foundation actually funded one of the last clinics I did here in Taos for the Taos community as well. I have a website with spay neuter information and all the resources for Taos County, one central website for everybody in Taos to be able to access. I do offer free spay neuter, free vaccines. For the dogs, it's free microchips, and cats, sometimes it's free, sometimes we do low cost. So since 2014, I have fixed here in Taos using the Santa Fe Humane Society's mobile spay neuter team. They come up, they bring the van up, as you all know, you probably know we have those in Cuesta. We fixed 336 cats for free, vaccinated for free. And that includes stray cats, pet cats, feral cats, whatever you want to bring me, I'll fix it. AJXL, I'll fix it. 258 dogs I fixed in the last 8 months. So then I added on a program to fix dogs because there was, definite need here in the community for free spay neuter for dogs, and it's just not present. Now for that, I don't bring up the mobile van. People have to drive to Santa Fe, to the Santa Fe Humane Society that I've contracted with, or to the Espanola Valley Humane Society. And I have people that drive from Costilla 2.5 hours to get to Santa Fe to take their dogs for spay. 2.5 hours one way, wait for your animal, bring it back 2.5 hours. So we're going to talk about how this isn't really efficient for the Taos community. Just as you're talking about transferring people to Albuquerque, we'd like to have sources for people to be able to get the services here as well for their animals. I do want to make a side note, companion pet overpopulation. This is a people problem. Again, to have a dog or cat call me and ask for a spay or neuter, it's always a person. So it does affect the people in the Taos community. It's not just an animal problem. So another thing I'd like to we'll get into as we discuss, when I do this mobile clinic in town, I can get people that participate from each one of your districts in my spay neuter because it's here in town. So I can get people from Penasco and Costilla and Cerro and Taos. Now when I do the dog spay neuter, where they have to drive to Espanola or Santa Fe, I start dropping off a lot of the people from District 2. I still get some people, but obviously mainly it's Penasco, Carson, and Taos, and Ranchos de Taos. So it's pretty clear that the farther you have to drive for that service, the less likely someone's going to do it, which is a problem. So real quick, I know you guys have already heard about what spay neuter is, but I'm talking about surgical spay neuter. And this requires a vet with a DEA license. So for males, we're just removing the testicles. We're not removing the scrotum, we're just taking out the testicles. And for the females, it's a full hysterectomy. So I'm not going to go in and talk about chemical neutering. We can always do that at a work study or a later time. In my opinion, it's not recommended for shelter pets. Santa Fe doesn't use it, Espanola doesn't use it. Actually, no shelter in New Mexico uses that. And we can get into later if you want to know why we don't. So the Taos Humane, which I'll refer to them colloquially because it's easier for me to just say Santa Fe, Espanola, and Taos Humane. They don't have a vet that has a DEA license. Now you need a DEA license in order to do surgical spay neuter. I'm also not going to get into all the benefits of spay neuter for the pet owner. I'm just going to talk about pet overpopulation, which to me is the #1 benefit of spay neuter. I would like to correct some misinformation I heard at the last county commissioner meeting. Kittens can get pregnant at 4 months and give birth by 6 months. And unfortunately, not everybody knows that. And then they wind up with a litter of kittens from their kitten, and they're all surprised. Cats can also get pregnant days after giving birth and be generating their next litter while they're nursing their current litter and give birth as soon as they wean their last litter. So they do reproduce more rapidly than dogs and more like rabbits. So I put this slide in. I know it's a little busy, but I do think we need to focus on what is the goal here. So for me, the goal is to reduce pet overpopulation via spay neuter. Because I think, and that's why it's my #1 strategy, I think it's the most cost effective. The spay neuter is cheaper than bringing in more and more animals into the shelter, having to take care of them, having to adopt them out. It solves the problem upstream. It's just the same thing as when you go for a cancer screening. Rather than waiting till you have cancer, why not nip it in the bud? And it's better for the community. There's less dogs running at large. And I like to have children playing outside, not worrying about being mauled by a dog running at large. Obviously, when it's here in the 80s and 90s, it was worse. But it's still not there. We still haven't solved that problem. There's less risk of rabies because when we do this free spay neuter, we vaccinate for rabies as well. And it's better for the cats and dogs in the community. If you are an animal lover, you'll realize there's less suffering and inhumane deaths because they're not out there frozen to the ground in the winter because there wasn't an abandoned litter. Now, what is the goal of the Humane Society? This is my, I just am surmising, but I think their goal is to save lives, but really to save lives for animals in their care. I want to help the community and save lives throughout the county in terms of not just the animals coming into the shelter. So the shelter does have a really high save rate. I think it's somewhere around 99%. But it's not that you don't have animals dying outside the shelter. It's not you don't have people with this problem. A lot of people don't even want to take animals to the shelter. They still call me and refer to it as the pound. So my goal is to save lives and solve the problem upstream rather than waiting until they're in the shelter where it costs that much more. Another goal is not to euthanize animals in their care. I know their intake is, they get twice as many dogs as cats, more than 2.4 times. And in 2015, the stats that I had, 20% of the shelter cat population was actually born in-house. So after animals came in, they let them give birth to more litters. And I don't know what the stats are for the puppies. I didn't have that information. Now, our own Humane Society is not truly an open door. So intake can be modified. You can turn people away. As I heard mentioned at the last meeting, they don't take in feral cats. They don't take in, as you know, from Cuesta, any of these incorporated areas, Red River, or you can be full, and just turn people away, or say that you have kennel cough and turn people away. So intake can be modified, and that number can vary based upon management decisions at the shelter, because it's not fully open door shelter like it is at the San Diego County shelter. Now, what is the goal of the Taos City government? I'm not 100% sure either, but I'm assuming it's to save some taxpayer money. I hope it is. And is it to, you're going to have to deal with continual requests from our local Humane Society for money. It's not going to go down. It's only going to go up. Right now, if we total in what the city's giving and your increased amount that the county is giving, you're looking at $147 an animal. And I base that on their 2015 intake stats of 1,829. Now, if we assume you're doing this 5-day hold, in Santa Fe's 3-day, if we're doing a 5-day hold, and the animal's there for the entire 5 days, you're spending about $29.40 per animal per those 5 days. It's pretty pricey. So another thing is, do you just want to hear the concerns of the animal welfare community, or do you want to address them so that you don't have to continue to hear them and solve the problem and really get at its source? And that's through spay neuter. All right. So really quick, I just did some diagrams because I want to compare what we're doing in Santa Fe and Espanola and compare to how it's working in Taos, because until you get into this, you don't really understand what's occurring in Taos. So if you were a Santa Fe resident and you had a feral cat or a kitten or a dog and you wanted to get low cost or free spay neuter, typically you'll call up your local humane or animal shelter. That's what people think to do. So what happens if you have any of those animals? The Santa Fe Humane will set up an appointment for you, and it'll be free. Be free if it's a feral cat. They have 2 days every week that's free dog spay neuter, free microchip, free vaccines. The other ones are low cost. If you have a pet cat, they'll say, we'll set up an appointment, but call the Zimmer Feline Foundation. They'll send a voucher and it'll be all free, including the vaccines, the Zimmer Feline Foundation. It's one source, it's very easy. You set up an appointment and you go. Now what do you do in Espanola? Which isn't too far from here. It's the same sort of thing. You're going to call it the Espanola Humane, and they're going to say, okay, we can fix a feral cat, we can loan you a trap for free, we can fix your pet cat. Zimmer Feline Foundation doesn't even make them call because she just covers all of the pet cat spay neuter for Espanola. They can just directly go through Espanola. And dog, same thing, free. They recently changed it that if you're within 10 miles of the Espanola Humane, it's free for dogs. If you're more than 10 miles, they ask for a $20 copay. So it's asked. If you really can't afford it, they're not going to turn you away. So again, it's free. Now, what happens when you call Taos? So most people logically would call up their Taos Humane and say, you know, I've got this cat or dog or feral cat, what do I do? Well, then it becomes a logistical nightmare for people. And it really is turning people off from doing spay neuter, because the more phone calls you have to make, the more hoops you have to jump through to get that spay neuter, the more likely people aren't going to follow through. It's the same with just preventative care here in town. If you have to jump through a bunch of hoops just to get a free cancer screening, you're not going to do it. And then your rates are going to go up as those people come into your ER and come off of potentially your indigent fund. So the Taos Humane does not offer spay neuter to the public like the Espanola and Santa Fe Humanes do. They've been around since 1991, that's 25 years, and they still don't. 25 years, okay? I think we really need to change the paradigm of how we're solving this problem. Because of this ongoing deficiency, when people call, they get ping-ponged to all these different nonprofit groups in search of low-cost or free dog or cat spay neuter. So, for example, let's look at this up close. Let's just say you have a feral cat. Well, Taos Humane doesn't take feral cats, much less give you a feral cat spay neuter, so you'll call Taos Feral Feline Friends, which is a couple that lives in, it's a nonprofit, it's a 513, but they live in Ranchos and they have a shelter for 80 cats as well. They have limited funds. I mean, great, they got some PetSmart grants, but guess what? PetSmart grants aren't open yet for 2016, still not open. So they haven't been able to refresh their funding for that. And they're in Ranchos. So it's hard for people up north to get a track from someone down in Ranchos, even if you go to the Salazar Vet. Now they only contract with the Salazar Vet. And as we're going to discuss, the Salazar Vet, great vet, they're doing a lot for our community, but there's a plateau. There's only so much that they can do. I mean, they went into private practice for a reason. It's not to do high volume spay neuter for the community. And they're doing a lot for us, but they've reached a limit of how many they can do. So this is creating a bottleneck, backlog in appointments. So if you can't get to Taos Feral Feline Friends, then you call me. And I'm Pet Head Taos, but you're going to have to drive to Espanola or Santa Fe, because I already know the local vets are backed up, and I can't do it that way. So they're going to have to trap that cat and drive it all the way down. Most people don't want to do that for a feral cat. They're not going to bother. And then what happens is that feral cat's going to have more kittens, you're going to have more intake in your shelter, and then they're going to come back and tell you they need more money. So it's just this vicious circle that goes on. Or if it's a dog, you have this pet dog, you'll call Four Corners Animal League. Penny Wardwood, formed with some other individuals, Four Corners Animal League, 16 years ago. She said the original intention of Four Corners Animal League was to have an 8-year bridge for the local humane to start doing public spay neuter and take over the whole thing. And here we are 16 years later. I think she's a bit exhausted now. But they contract with Salazar Road Vet and Taos Vet, and Four Corners Animal League would love to be focusing on education and outreach about spay neuter instead of trying to provide the spay neuter. So if you can't afford the $90 copay for the spay neuter through Four Corners, $90.70 for a neuter, $90 for a spay, pretty much vet, plus the cost of vaccines that the vet's going to charge you, then you call me. And then you can get a free spay neuter, but again, you're going to have to drive. It's going to be free vaccines and microchip. But people have 3 or 4 dogs, and you multiply that by over $100, it's not going to happen. They're just not going to follow through. The people that you really need to get. Taos Humane will offer a mom dog spay to give them all the puppies. And they'll do that locally, but sort of locally. I mean, they use Angel Fire Vet. So I know a guy in Penasco who had to drive to Angel Fire Vet to get the mom dog spay. Seems kind of far to send somebody to go do that. In the end, he didn't give them all the puppies. I spayed the puppies for free because it wasn't really going to be a last litter. It was going to be more litters. I actually fixed 4 female dogs for him just to get it all done. And he took them to Santa Fe, which was nice. But even the last litter program has its issues. Okay, so hopefully you got a better picture of what's going on. If it's a pet cat, you can get a Zimmer Feline Foundation voucher, and you can, the only vet in town that'll take it, Salazar Road Vet. And they're back to 2 months. Gestation period for a cat, 2 months. So you do the math, what's going to happen when someone has a cat that they don't know is already pregnant and then has a litter even before their pregnant date. So I just wanted to give you an example of what's going on in other communities so that you can compare it to what Taos is doing. Santa Fe Animal Shelter and Humane Society. foreign entity. They're doing over 8,000 spay neuters just in 2015. And this is public and shelter animals. They do spay neuter at the shelter's facility 7 days a week. And all shelter animals are actually spay neutered prior to even going out for adoption. You take it because they're occasionally. They spay them and then they put up for adoption. You get that instant gratification of walking out your kid all ready to go. You don't have to wait even for a spay neuter. And they transfer in animals from other shelters and rescues. So they're doing so well, they transfer in. They transfer in from Arizona, California, and across New Mexico. From organizations that are being responsible about their spay neuter to really tackle the problem in their community. So that's where they're going to transfer animals in. So you have to do the spay neuter community. Espanola, 4,125 spay neuters in 2015. Again, this is public and shelter animals. And the spay neuter occurs at the shelter's facility 5 days a week. They have 3 days a week. They do it for the public, 2 days a week is for the shelter. All shelter animals are spay neutered prior to going to their adoptive home. They don't leave that shelter unless they're fixed. And their intake is decreasing.
Mr. Chairman, what is the reason for the decrease in intakes?
With Espanola, they're really pushing the spay neuter, and they made it free. So free for the cats, free for the dogs, readily available. You can call and make an appointment. It's going to be 2 weeks or less. You have to wait to get an appointment. And so they just, Bridget Lundquist is their director, and they understand that spay neuter is the way to solve the problem. Otherwise, you just, you got the dam is just flooding and you're sopping up the water, but it's still broken and the water's still coming through if you don't fix it in spay neuter. So yeah, they really push the spay neuter, and they bring up vets from, like Tom Parker works there, a vet from Taos. Holly Johnson has worked at the Santa Fe as well as doing spay neuter, and they have multiple vets that come in to do spay neuter for them, not necessarily living in Espanola.
So for as far as the numbers for both Santa Fe and Espanola, are those good numbers, or should they do better?
Well, I think Santa Fe, Mary Martin can speak more to that. They're really tackling this spay neuter issue. So they're no longer looking at what we call low-hanging fruit. They actually have this whole system where they're going door to door. Hey, we'll pick up your animal, we'll take it for free and bring it back. We're not even at that point because we have people clamoring to get spay neuter that can't. So we're still trying to get even just low-hanging fruit. So at some point what happens is your number should peak and then start to come down where you don't have to have as much spay neuter because everything's fixed or people are being responsible. I don't think Espanola's hit that yet, but I think Santa Fe has, and Mary can speak more to that. Now, in terms of Santa Fe, they do it in 3 facilities. So you have the shelter where they have vets there, they fix it at the shelter. They have a hospital open to the public where people can, it's kind of like, full service vet, and you can privately pay to have your animal fixed. They also have within town a clinic that is just for spay neuter, and that runs 6 days a week, Tuesday through Sunday, with great weekend appointments for people. And so I have people here in Taos that will go to the Santa Fe because they can get an appointment on a Sunday. And they're nice enough to extend that if you're outside of Santa Fe, it's only $30 on those Thursdays and Sundays to get your dog fixed, vaccinated, and microchipped. Pretty good. And then I offset it. So that's free. So that's how they do it in Santa Fe and Espanola. They recently just moved all their stuff into a double-wide trailer. It's still on the property, but they just rented all of this nice little medical suite that they have, so they do all the surgery in this trailer. So how does this compare with Taos? Well, according to the stats I saw in the article that they published, they did 568 spay neuter in 2015. In 2015, 0 were within the shelter's facility. In terms of shelter animals, they adopted out 620. They said they did 27 of this last litter program for 2015, 27. So that's about 2 mom dogs a month. Those aren't really high numbers. That isn't really going to meet the needs of our community. Now, this could be because people don't want to participate in it. It could be that, it's not well advertised. They also have a part-time veterinarian. She does not perform spay neuter. She does not have a DEA license. Now, you need a DEA license to perform spay neuter surgery, humane euthanasia. So if you have an animal that comes into the shelter that's been severely injured and needs to be given pain medication or humanely euthanized, you need a DEA license to be able to do that. Otherwise, you have to outsource that. That increases your cost, not to mention the poor animal suffering no longer. Now, I think these days, the shelter talks, the spay neuter talk, they don't walk the walk, and that's why I'm here. They're adopting out shelter animals prior to spay neuter. I'm not in agreement with this. I think that even in communities in New Mexico, you just don't do that. And it's like #1 rule, you don't adopt out shelter animals. It's like letting the genie out of the bottle. Because once they've left your facility, you've lost the control to spay neuter that animal. Not to mention you're putting a bigger burden on that, the doctor, you know, to have to go and do that. Wouldn't it be nice to just be able to take that animal home? Not have to worry about another appointment, follow up. I've got kids that got to go to school, or I have a mother I need to take care of, and things will drop off the list. So 20% of the increase in the shelter intakes for 2015 is what they reported. I don't know if that's just because of shelter births, since 20% of their cat population was born in-house, or if it's because they're, bringing in more animals. So just to compare, I took this off the web. So Espanola Valley Humane Society, they're having their 9th annual kitten festival. And the reason why I was aware of this is because I wanted to book some Taos dogs for spay neuter near the end of July, and I cement up some dates. And they said, we're going to have to back off because we have 150 cats and kittens to fix before our kitten adoption event. Everything is fixed before it goes up for this big adoption event. This is 9 years going, and they take all of them down to Santa Fe and they do a massive adoption event. But the big take home is they're fixed. Whether they're 8 weeks old, 4 months old, 6 months old, or 2 years, doesn't matter, they're fixed. Now, I was relieved when I read through the Taos County Animal Control Ordinance. I thought you guys had solved a problem, a loophole, and that you required alteration of companion animals. In other words, they had to be spayed and neutered. So no companion animal owned by a person who lives in Taos County shall leave any animal shelter, including an ASF, without having been altered, except provided you're in. And those exceptions are like your 3 strikes rule for dogs. So I thought that meant that the Taos shelter couldn't be adopting out animals intact. I mean, they don't do that in Santa Fe, they don't do it in Espanola, they don't do it in Albuquerque, they don't do it in San Diego, I mean, all across the U.S. If you're responsible, you just don't do that. But I think they found a loophole in that instead, you just create something and you call it your foster to adopt program. Now you say, okay, well, someone coming in looking for a cat or a puppy or a dog, and I'm interested in adopting it. Well, one, it's not fixed, so you just call it a foster to adopt, and you legally hold on to the ownership of the animal, the shelter does, so now it's not really technically owned by a person who lives in Taos County, and it can walk out of that shelter intact. I think that's a loophole you need to close if they won't just honor the, what you intended by this ordinance, then you need to close that loophole that they can't do that anymore. I think I don't know if 99% success rate with their foster adopt is true. I mean, I don't have a Freedom of Information Act to rely upon with a private institution to get their records, but it doesn't make sense as to why you wouldn't do it anyway. What's the argument against fixing it before it leaves the building so that we don't have this question come up? So instead, this is something I definitely want you to either look into with your contract, or if it's too difficult to fix it in the ordinance, because I've heard some discussion that, yes, that's a bear. I did want to mention Commissioner O'Donnell hit the nail on the head when she asked at the last meeting why Colorado takes so many puppies from other states. It's not a rocket science, it's supply versus demand. Colorado doesn't have a huge supply of puppies. Why? Because they have mandatory spay neuter. And this isn't a discussion about making mandatory spay neuter for the public. It is something for you to think about. But she was correct. It is because they have a low supply compared to the surrounding states, because they're aggressive about spay neuter. It's not because animal control officers are doing a great job of licensing animals and tracking people down. It's because those shelters always make sure they're adopted before they leave, and they also have a mandatory public spay neuter policy. Honestly, transferring puppies to Colorado from Taos is very expensive. It's not a long-term solution to the problem. And if Taos was doing spay neuter here before they place those animals in the home, we'd have a better chance of getting transferred just down the road to the Santa Fe Humane. who takes from Arizona, California, and other places in New Mexico that have responsible spay neuter policies in place. In terms of, just as a side thing I want you to think about, but we're not going to go into, in terms of mandatory spay neuter, we can educate people regarding wearing a seatbelt. If there's a mandatory law saying you need to wear a seatbelt. So you can educate people about certain things, but at some point, people do institute laws that they think will save lives, save taxpayer money. So you still have the choice not to wear your seatbelt. You just get a ticket, right? And it's the same thing with drinking and driving. We can educate people not to drink and drive, so people still make that choice. But we have a law saying you can't drink and drive. Don't think that you still don't have a choice, you just might pay a little bit more money to make a choice that's going to cost taxpayers money in the end. There's a sheriff in the room? Yeah, okay. So, in regards to what I heard at the last meeting about, we talked about these intact animals, and, we expect the animal control officers to, for the ones that don't make their appointment, to track them down, and that to me is ludicrous. It's a waste of taxpayer money. We have 3 animal control officers for a population of 33,000 spread out over a large territory. This is a picture of a pack of dogs that runs on my property up in San Cristobal from an owner who I know who they are, and this has been going on for 10 years. I'd much rather animal control be focusing on dogs running at large than tracking down an animal that could have already been fixed by the shelter before it was adopted out. So it makes much more sense for the safety of our community that our limited resources not be taxed by going after shelter animals that should have already been fixed before they left. And dogs running at large are still a problem. These dogs are dangerous. And I do fear for my safety with these animals coming on my property because they're semi-feral. They're owned, not terribly frightened of people because they're owned, and yet they run in a large pack, loose without their owner. So in terms of the Taos shelter for animal spay neuter, this is what really happens. The shelter uses local vet offices. This creates a backlog in spay neuter appointments for the Taos public. So if you have a Zimmer voucher and it's taking you 2 months to get an appointment, well, one of the reasons is because they're fixing animals for the shelter instead of the shelter fixing their own animals. They also now are started using mobile vet services. In 2015, they brought up the Santa Fe mobile van, part to use that $5,000 I gave them. And they did a mobile clinic in June, August, and September that totaled 5 days. Okay, 2015, 5 days. In 2016, they've now initiated bringing in the dogsters from Colorado. And I'm calculating they're doing approximately 26 spay neuters per day when they have them there. So in April, they did 58 animals in a 2-day clinic. They had nothing scheduled for May. June, they had a 3-day clinic and they did 72 animals. Nothing scheduled for July. Monica Corral, Harvey Oakham's daughter, she told me they have a 2-day clinic scheduled in August, a 2-day clinic scheduled in September. So I'm estimating they'll get another 52 animals done. Now, Harvey said he would also be having these clinics till the end of the year. I mean, assuming this van, these people are going to drive through the winter weather in November, December to come here, then that would mean that their 2016 mobile would do 390 spay neuters. And they did 563 last year. So obviously, we have a shortfall that's being made up by local vets. Okay, so the spay neuter occurring at the shelter, and only an average of 1 or 2 a day per month, that's insufficient to meet the needs of Taos, even for the shelter. Now, I'm also going to say that I don't think that foster to adopt shelter animals, they should not be referred to as public spay neuter. So I'm concerned that because the local vets don't do really early spay neuter, they typically do not do spay neuter on 8-week-old animals. They're so backlogged with the animals that are 6 months old, and they don't even have time for that. So they don't do that, and yes, that's the age of the animals that the shelter has. Then the shelter is adopting out these animals, calling them foster adopt, and then bringing them back in to get fixed at their mobile clinic and calling it a public spay neuter and taking additional money from the county to cover that. So I'm not sure where your $3,700 went. The last clinic that was in June, I was told booked up in 2 days. Monica said it booked up in 2 days. When we hold a clinic, and it's a 1-day clinic, not a 3-day, it'll take us 3 weeks to book that. And Penny Wardlow, Holly Howard, I've been doing multiple of those clinics. It takes a while to book those clinics. So my guess is foster dog animals actually filled up that clinic schedule, not really public animals. So the money we thought was going to go to fixing public animals that I know the commission has been putting into year after year, I don't think it went there. So he also said that the Taos Humane was using the Santa Fe, because Blankenhorn asked a question, who's doing your Spay Neuter? He said he was using the Santa Fe Humane as well as the Espanola. They haven't been using the Santa Fe Humane since the last mobile clinic in September of 2015, and Espanola since April 4th. I talked to the director of operations there, and she said they haven't heard from them in months. So, my point is, I think you've got it now, Taos needs more Spay Neuter, okay? Now, when I mentioned Espanola, the reason why I did, Rio Arriba County population is about 40K. We're at about 33. I think they're pretty good match demographically compared to Taos, rather than trying to compare us to Santa Fe, which is a wealthier base. So if I extrapolate that data, then I'm estimating that Taos needs to do about 3,400 a year. And the reason why I use that number is because Espanola is now starting to see a decrease in intake to the shelter. So you've got to do enough that you can start seeing the decrease of intake. That'll save you money. That'll solve the problem. And so Taos has about 85% of this population. That's where I come up with this number. So what is the public Spay Neuter? And I mean public. I'm talking about, you know, your boyfriend got you a puppy, your dog had puppies, you found this cat on the street, that's public. I'm not talking about an animal entrance to the shelter. So what's the public Spay Neuter for 2015? So Four Corners Animal League paid you approximately 700 reduced cost dog Spay Neuter per year. Now they only use the Salazar vet and the Taos vet typically. And so they're going to run into a backlog of appointments too. Zimmer Feline Foundation, which you may not be aware of, is actually saving Taos thousands upon thousands of dollars. This woman is based in Santa Fe, and she's sent out vouchers that have been redeemed. She has 316 pet cats. Salazar Road Vet Clinic is the only one that will take that voucher in Taos. That's 316 free cat Spay Neuter for pet cats, including vaccines. Taos Feral Feline Friends, they also do cat Spay Neuter. They also do the feral. They're the only ones really mainly doing this feral cat, which is something I'm going to get into. It's something you really need to tackle. It has to be free, because who wants to pay to take a feral cat to get Spay Neuter? And they did 268. 90 of those were paid for by Zimmer, so there's an overlap between that 316 and that 268. And just in case of reference, if you wanted to know, the Zimmer Feline Foundation also fixed 464 cats between 2010 and 2014, just for Taos County. My group, Planned Parenthood Taos, typically, if I do cat, it's here in town. Cats don't like to go on long car rides, and people don't like to take them because they're pretty miserable on it. Just for this last year, I did 154 free cat Spay Neuter with vaccines, and I started my dog program at the end of last year, and I did 83. Now we're up to over 200 and something. The dogs, I don't do here in town. People have got to drive to Santa Fe or Espanola. It's really hard doing those mobile clinics for dogs, like it's labor intensive. It's very expensive because you can only do like that. If you have a high volume, high quality vet, you can do about 25 dogs. I mean, they're bigger animals. It's a longer surgery. But I can do more than 50 cats one day. We did a 90 cat clinic where I was at. We did 90 cats in one day last year. And then in terms of what your commission and the county has been funding, last year you guys did 154 dog, free, they were free for the most part, and 6 cat. I see 70% free because some of the clinics had a $30 copay in the beginning. And then those Santa Fe mobile clinics, so the money comes from the Taos County, and then they're hosted by Four Corners Animal League, out of Cuesta, Northern New Mexico Friends of Animals, and Penasco, Joyce, host them there. And that's a lot of work for your volunteers that are doing that. Okay, so what I wanted to say is, we've got Four Corners doing some, we've got Zimmer, we've got Taos VIII, we have all these different groups, and it's very piecemeal, it's inefficient, it's not always local, the backlog is long to get an appointment, and then you're just building up more and more and more animals, which is only increasing the amount of burden of taxpayer dollars that have to go to take care of intake at the shelter. So it's not efficient, and it's just not working. And we'd much rather be focusing on education to get to the population that doesn't want to do spay neuter, and getting to that rather than just trying to get spay neuter to the people who are desperate for it. So all these organizations that I mentioned, we are 100% volunteer, no paid staff, and we don't take tax dollars. So it's not taxpayer money out of your pocket. The take-home message, we need a public spay neuter clinic. And this is what I'm going to try to convince you to do. Taos needs easy access to low-cost and free spay neuter over a variety of needs. Not just mom dogs, not just the occasional pet cat, a whole variety. So it needs to be accessible. It needs to be within Taos, so people can get all the way from Costilla, or from Penasco, or from Carson. Taos is a good central location, whether animals need spay neuter, shopping, or whatever. Easy to make an appointment. You don't want to have to call Taos Main and have to call me and then bounce to Four Corners. Then you need one number that you can call and just make and say, yeah, make the appointment. And the appointment needs to be within a certain period of time. The further out it is, the more likely that person won't go through with the appointment. It needs to be offered year-round. I mean, it's hard for us to bring up local clinics. I mean, it's not going to come up from Santa Fe through the winter. It's going to be hard for the doctors to get from Colorado here to even do those shelter animals. And it needs to be a high-volume, high-quality spay neuter vet. Not every vet can do high-volume, high-quality spay neuter. It's the same thing. If you were going to get a vasectomy or a hysterectomy, you probably wouldn't go to a GP for it. You'd go to somebody who's been doing it for a while, and do it well. They're really good at it, and it's tough to get some of these vets, but Santa Fe does it, Espanola does it, we can too. It needs to be affordable, so I think we need to have low-cost spay neuter for dogs and cats. We need to also combine it with sometimes offering free spay neuter for dogs and cats. Zimmer Feline Foundation, she's giving Taos County free pet spay neuter for cats, and yet we're limited because there's only one vet that'll take that voucher in town. If we had a spay neuter clinic and we took those vouchers, that offsets the cost tremendously because then she's paying for it and reimbursing. She has a whole reimbursement schedule, and that would save taxpayer money. We need to be able to offer a feral cat TNR and feral cat trap loans. This will tackle your kitten population that's ever increasing. You know, when Commissioner O'Donnell mentioned about Colorado taking puppies, it's not that they're taking our kittens. Why? Because the feral cats everywhere are still producing them. So you don't have as many dogs running at large as you do as these feral cats. If you don't tackle that feral cat problem, you won't get a hold of your kitten population problem. Which is why in Santa Fe and Espanola, they offer free cat TNR and trap in return. You just don't put them to sleep because you do that. You just get in more that fill that same space. They've done studies on that. You just return and they can't gain. And you'll find that you're going to get donor-funded free dogs, spay neuter, and vaccines. I'm certainly willing to chip in. Four Corners, Penny Wardlow said she'd be willing to do like a radio song and a fundraiser to bring in money on an annual basis to help offset costs. And I think at the same time you could offer low-cost free vaccines and low-cost or free vaccines and microchips. Now, Espanola doesn't offer, it's a different price scale whether or not you have an animal that's fixed or not. So the incentive is, I think the best thing to do is occasionally offer free. Because who doesn't love a free deal? You don't want to tack on, oh yeah, it's free spay, but you're going to have to spend $10 for microchip, and we're going to force you to get vaccines, and force you to get the microchip, and force you to get a license, and now you have to come up with $30 as well. Then you're going to lose part of your population. If you want to opt for it, you can, or make it free, or opt for a license. If you start saying you have to license in order to get anything free, and you might get people just saying no in that case. But, something to be explored later down the road and just see how it goes. And it needs to be applicable to our situation. This is the same everywhere. Pet dogs, pet cats, semi-feral, cats, feral dogs and everyone's, right? Early spay neuter for kittens and puppies. Once they're 2 pounds, they're big enough to fix. We do it all the time in San Diego. We've been doing it for over decades. We do it in Santa Fe, we do it in Espanola. They're fine. And we need to be able to offer for pregnant cats and dogs. There's some people that have waited too long, they still just want to stop the litter. And we need to be able to offer that service to people who choose to do that. And you can have a feral cat that's pregnant too. You just need to fix it. So, in terms of the spay neuter clinic, I already talked about that it needs to be somewhere close within Taos. I think it needs to be separate from the Taos Humane. I mean, they've been around for 25 years. They're not really meeting the needs of the community in terms of spay neuter. They certainly are providing an animal welfare need, but I think at this point we need to realize they're not going to fulfill the same role that the Espanola Humane or the Santa Fe Humane is providing their communities. And I know there's been talk about creating your own shelter. This is something that's not going to take, site placement and 2 years and hiring people to look after dogs and cats. This is something we can do quickly, and we can set it up. There's already a local vet that can do high volume spay neuter. It's Dr. Holly Johnson. She used to do it for the shelter. She's working part-time at the Salzer vet, spaying shelter animals that come into that private vet. We could ask her if she'd be willing to do spay neuter at this clinic, and we can bring in vets on a rotational basis, like Dr. Parker or Dr. Snook, and ask and see if these high volume could come in on our Saturday, and be willing to come in October, and we can get this ball rolling. Now this is going to have to mean that the money's going to have to come in from various sources. I'm willing to contribute, Four Corners could do a fundraiser, and plug in some money just to buy the equipment. And we need some space.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Audra. Really helpful information. Obviously, the answer is spay neuter. And we know that out here, and we're pushing it and talking about it. It's the only way you ever get a handle on the problem. Clearly, the numbers you presented, we're not doing it here in Taos. We're not even close to what we need to be doing. Now, the county has a statutory obligation to make sure there's a place to take stray animals. And for that, we are paying stray hearts. We are already paying a disproportionate amount.
I agree.
And so for us now to say, okay, we're going to start this new program and do our own clinic, we need our contractor to have the spay neuter capabilities within the shelter. The equipment is already there, and that's clearly the answer. We can't take on additional financial responsibilities with opening our own clinic. In my opinion, we need our contractor to set it up. And last time Harvey said he would set it up. In subsequent emails, there was some backing away from that because of difficulties. There is no other answer. You can't have kittens born in your shelter. You can't send dogs and cats out into the community that haven't been spayed or neutered. And the reason we do it here is because we don't have the facility in place in the shelter, and that's what we need.
Well, I think that it can be out of the shelter. I think that you need to think outside the box. You keep continuing on the same path, expecting the shelter to do it 25 years later. Are you just going to keep expecting it, and it's never going to happen? You're going to spend more taxpayer money. This intake's never going to go down. And if they're fundamentally against proceeding that way because they want to run it, they have different ideas about it. It's a private thing. If they want to rescue dogs and rehabilitate them for 3 or 4 years, and that's their main goal, then that's their goal. And you should separate from that and realize it's not expensive to set up a spay. This is way cheaper than a shelter. I talked to Mary Martin, $100 grand.
All right. Well, then we would have to take that out of the contract because we are already paying much more than other counties are paying to fulfill our statutory responsibility. And the reason is that Harvey, runs that shelter that saves animals, and it's a wonderful thing.
But I think you're going to have to.
It's not the government's responsibility to do that. The government's responsibility is to get a hold of the problem by spay neutering and ensuring that there's a safe place for these stray animals.
Is it okay if I invite Mary Martin to say a few words about this?
Commissioner O'Donnell.
I just did a calculation. If we need to spay 3,400 animals a year at a cost of $60. That's $204,000. Right now, we have added to the spay neuter $25,000. We would be able to spay 400 animals this year. Regarding spay and neuter of last year, the 15,000, Sheriff, I'm not clear how that was given out, how much we gave to spay Stray Hearts, how much we gave to Four Corners. But if they did spay 154, that's about $7,400. I would be cautious, Mr. Presenter, on making accusations of illegal activities, Stray Hearts, which you referred to, and I think the best way is to get records, get clarification. If the foster program is not working, then we need to reassess it. But I just wanted to point out the $200,000 it would cost us if we were to do 3,400 animals.
It would cost a lot less if the equipment within the shelter was being used by a vet that was being paid by the shelter that we are subsidizing, was performing the operation. It would cost a whole lot less. That was a big part of the presentation.
Well, I think that's what you're asking on, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, you mentioned the figure of $100,000.
Yes. I think that's something Mary Martin was talking about in terms of like, you don't want to buy used anesthesia equipment. I think also the figure you came up with was incorrect, Commissioner O'Donnell, because you're not factoring in that the Zimmer Feline Foundation would be willing to pay for the pet cat spay neuter within Taos, and if we took their vouchers, we would be refunded for that money, and that people would be willing to donate. I mean, Santa Fe, Maine, they don't offer this free spay neuter for dogs out of completely out of their own pocket. They get $120,000 a year from a donor who believes in it. So it's not that the county would be footing the entire bill. I just think that it would be helpful if it was within a city or county building or in a trailer. And I didn't say there was illegal activities, and people are skirting the law and the ordinance, and I think we should close that loophole. And I think Mary Martin can talk more about the cost, because she knows it, and she's done this.
Commissioner Gray.
Mr. Chair, I've really been a little bit more educated with your presentation today, and I think that in last meeting we had, I objected to the contractual agreement. And as you said earlier, it is a private business. And, you know, if we put $25,000 a year into spay and neutering, the offset is that if we spay and neuter 5 or 10, or there's been 5 or 10 that have been spayed and neutered, we don't know where the rest of, you know, tens of thousands of dollars go. Is it just for staff, or is it all dedicated to that? I don't know if Mr. Yoker wants to address that, but, you know, I think if we're spending $25,000 a year on spay and neutering,
You want it to be for the public?
it's got to be for that public
Yeah.
use, not, you know, and you know, I kind of would like to hear more of how this funding can come from private individuals and nonprofits or any other organizations, and then see what the county would like to come up with. I mean, it's going to be a different way of tackling things, and we got to look at that. I can understand where Commissioner Blackmore says the facility's there at the Stray Hearts location.
Sure.
Why it's not getting used? We
And
don't
at
know.
some point, you're going to have to cut your losses and say, this is, you know, you keep trying and trying to get them to do what you want them to do. Instead, say, this isn't as big as trying to set up a shelter, that's going to cost you a lot more money. And even if you still want to do that down the road, fine, but at least be tackling the pet overpopulation problem right now, because that's something we can set up pretty quickly. And I think Holly Johnson, who they won't hire, that's a local vet. They claim they can't get a vet to do spay neuter. We've got one here that can do it. They just won't hire him.
Well, I think you said it's a money-making business for me, and I see it that you know, if we dropped to 3,000, then how many are going to be needed to be in Stray Heart?
Right.
You know, so the shelter decreases their holding, which means that we don't need to pay as much.
Right.
Now, I understand that Mr. Yoakum has a staff there that maybe the staff will be decreased
Right.
to where it's more for the animal and less for staff.
Yeah, and I don't think that they would be opposed to having less intake and having less of that come in. And that's the ultimate goal of any shelter, is to work towards making itself obsolete.
Thank you. I'm not opposed to doing it outside of the shelter. I'm just saying that we would need to adjust our contract with the shelter accordingly. We can only put in so much money per year for animal care, and I prefer to put it to a spay neuter. That's always been my goal, and that's always been my preference. So if it means setting up a separate clinic, and that's the only way we can do it because they can't do it or they won't do it at Stray Hearts, then we have to adjust the contract with Stray Hearts.
Well, and I don't understand how, because I don't know all the government stuff, in terms of the contract might be adjusted after you get the clinic going, because as far as I understood, the money that you're paying for them is for the 5-day hold period. It is technically not going for spay neuter. I mean, is that how the money's being spent?
Yeah, it doesn't have to go for spay neuter, and the 5-day care is almost arbitrary because we're not doing it by a number of animal formula. So if you don't have a number of animals in there, then 5 days doesn't really mean anything. We're just basically paying 14 grand a month or whatever it is. And,
Right, but you're not paying that for, technically, for public spay neuter. You're paying it for the shelter animals, and this clinic would be public spay neuter.
but we have a
Really
limited budget,
tactical.
but we can only put in so much for
Right.
animal care. That's my point.
Right, I think, but we could do like a separate meeting and talk about what are the numbers that are gonna be involved, because I don't think it's as big as what you're thinking it's gonna be.
If we paid Stray Hearts specifically by formula, number of animals taken, and we set a number of days, then our costs would go down dramatically. And then we could afford very nice.
Well, I feel like Commissioner Gallegos as well, you've opened my eyes to a lot of information that I didn't know myself, so I really appreciate that. And I know that we've given a 6-month contract to Stray Hearts, and I'm hoping that you can come back again and become part of that conversation, those workshops that we need to hold in order to address this problem in the next 6 months and get it going. And I really like your idea. I think it's a great idea.
I just don't think it's something you can keep pushing off, and, you don't wanna wait another 6 months to even
Right.
think about doing it.
By
We're just
then it will be
exploding
10,000 more.
more and more. Is it okay, I don't know how this works here, is it okay that I invite Mary Martin just to say a few words about this?
Sure.
Mr. Chairman,
Putting her on the spot. I know, but just in case she has something to add.
I really just wanted to support Audra in what she's saying, and one of the things you talk quite a bit about is Espanola, because it's a community that's much more like your own, but we have dropped our intake over 1,500 animals from doing spay neuter since 2006 in a public clinic. The other thing for us, and it may or may not apply, so I feel a little awkward in saying it, but I will tell you, we operate our spay neuter clinic in the black. It actually makes money for our shelter by providing wellness services to the community at low cost. So it's just something to consider. This is not something that's a financial burden on the shelter or the community. And so there are ways, as you move forward, if I can be helpful in any way in helping you put that together so that it is something that can create it doesn't make a lot of money, but just being in the black at all for us is fantastic, yet we're able to provide all these services. And as I say, we ask no questions. Whether you drive up in a Mercedes or a Beater vehicle and you get spay neuter, that's the way we've found that it works best for our community, is just to provide it and stop asking questions.
Mr. Chairman, and so are you able to do registration of animals?
Licensing, yes.
Licensing?
Right on the spot, absolutely.
And where does that money go to? Does it go to the county, the municipality?
It actually this time goes to the Santa Fe Animal Shelter, which was a contractual agreement to help offset costs. And if we reach a certain threshold, then we split any further revenues with the city or county.
So you could do a one-stop shop.
Absolutely. And we also have licensing online as well, so we try to make it as easy as possible for people.
Thank you. And you have a contract with Santa Fe County?
And city and county separate
Santa Fe
contracts.
County, and you do the spay neuter right there. in the shelter.
Yeah, and
No animals ever go out, foster, non-foster. Do you have a lot of your kitten population born in the shelter?
Almost zero. We actually are now at a point where kitten population in Santa Fe is so low because we've been doing free spay neuter for feral cats that we're importing kittens from other communities. We're now talking to Bernalillo County and other places trying to help them with their problem because our clinic has been so, it's anecdotal information, but it looks like from 2006 to 2016, doing somewhere between 5,000 and 8,000 spay neuters annually has had a direct impact in that intake. We can't swear that. We are looking at it closely, but we are actually, as Audra mentioned, going door to door in the most poverty-stricken areas, trying to provide services. And one of the things we discovered that I thought was fascinating is a lot of talk about cultural differences in who's going to spay neuter what, and what we found that most of that is not true at all. It's just a matter of having the services available to people at an affordable rate. We were stagnant. We were by no means perfect. We found out that 2 miles from a clinic that's been there since 2006, there were 1,000 people in the last 2 years that had not had their animals spayed and neutered, not because they didn't want it, but because they didn't know we existed. And so by giving them, going door to door and putting out flyers, we've been able to get that population in those poor areas. And again, seen another decrease. Literally, as I mentioned, we're about 1,500 animals down below where we were. Gosh, more. I started in 2009, and it's not to do with me, it's to do with the clinic being there. And yet there's still pockets of population that we need to address, and we are addressing that because we can. Because we're not dancing as fast as we can, trying to just solve the, as you said, stem the tide of the flood.
And Mr. Chairman, within the Santa Fe County area, you have a number of reservations, Native American reservations
Yes.
as well. And I think we realize that in Taos County we have the Taos Public Communities, but we do have an overflow of pets from the reservations as well. So I was wondering if there was a specific way that how you address that.
I wish I could say I'm expert in that area. We have struggled there as well. We have offered free spay neuter days in different pueblos and had 2 or 3 people show up. We were right there, and so it's a conundrum for us as well. I think it's something that we probably all should put our heads together to try to help. I do believe free, accessible, it may require transport. It depends on what we were taking our mobile there, so and still had reasonably poor turnout, not in every clinic, but in some of them, and it's frustrating, it truly is. So I think part of the problem is that many of the animals, at least in the pueblos that I'm familiar with, the animals are loosely owned, like resident dogs, and so people don't necessarily want to pick them up and bring them. One of the things we found in the areas we targeted, that many people in the poverty-stricken areas, the only nice thing they have is their vehicle, and they're not putting these dogs in those vehicles. So for us, we're now providing transport. They were bringing all their little dogs to the clinics, but they weren't bringing large dogs. And so now we go out in the community and transport those large dogs. We have no trouble getting them, people to come, but it's not necessarily on the pueblo. So we haven't been targeting them as much as we would like.
And you, Dr. Scully, you mentioned the fact that you've had a decline in dogs in the Espanola Rio Rico area. One of the interesting things that I've seen traveling on that road between Velarde and Espanola a lot, on any given day you'll see at least 3 or 4 dogs that have been hit on the road. And these are typically probably just dogs that are running loose without any owners. They're born, they breed, they're born, and it's a vicious cycle. And the ones that survive, they come back on the road again a few days later and they get hit. So maybe that attributes to the decline in dog population in the area.
I'm sure coyotes do a lot
As well.
around here. Well, that was my main point, but I hope that you think about putting a public spay neuter clinic in place, and not a year from now, but quicker than that, and working with Four Corners, Animal League, and Planned Parenthood, and we can collaborate with Espanola Humane. You know, they have all the order lists, they know what we need, we know how to set this up, they've done it. And it's not, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can bring in funding from multiple sources. I mean, we're missing out on a great amount of money from the Zimmer Feeling Foundation because we just don't even have the capacity to take all those vouchers that she's willing to offer us.
Commissioner Bell has something.
Mr. Chairman, I do want to point out our animal ordinance does not require spay neuter, so that could possibly be a weak link. But I need to be excused. May I be excused? I have to be at Penasco. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. We have the 2-strike rule or the 3-strike rule, whatever it is, but it's not being enforced because we don't have the capacity to perform the operation anywhere. We have to send out vouchers to the Saddles Up Clinic. See, that's the problem.
In San Diego, when we have an animal that comes in, the intake and it's unaltered, we don't have a law either that says that the public has to spay neuter. We have a rule that the shelters and the rescues have to spay neuter before they're released. They try and pass one.
We have that rule also.
Right. But the thing is, this is one way they do it. By having, and you made an excellent point, by having an in-house vet, I mean, obviously San Diego has one. When someone brings in an animal and it's impounded, we give them options. Cat or dog, and if they come to reclaim their animal, but they don't want you to spay or neuter, and it's like we add up every fee there is. Your kennel fee, your vaccine fee, this fee, and a fine for running at large, or we'll spay or neuter your dog for free and waive the fines. 9 times out of 10, they say, spay that dog, spay that cat, I'll take it. Sometimes they say, I'll pay the fine, and other times, a small percentage will walk away from that animal. But in that case, your animal's better off than maybe in a new home and not with that owner. But giving someone that option for a free spay neuter rather than paying this enormous fee, they say, yeah, sure, I'll take it.
Commissioner Gray.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I would really like to see Dr. Scully help us in organizing this in the next couple of months. We don't have 6 months, as you said. We have a lot less time. It would be really wonderful if you can lead us into where we have to go with regards to this. And, I would be the first one to give my support to that, and I hope the rest of the commission will do the same.
Thank you, Commissioner. If we address that contract.
And we're going to have to do that as well.
I'm certainly willing to help. I mean, I'm not going to be in this 2 or 3 years from now having the same conversation. I told Lincoln Horn, I'm going to put my money, time, and effort in a community that really wants to tackle the problem. I've already been doing this for 2 years, and this needs to happen. I think that it's just our current situation is not working. But we can get there. This isn't rocket science. It's not that difficult to do.
Certainly appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Appreciate you
Thank you
having
for
me.
coming up and being with us.
Thank you for letting me speak.
All right. Okay, Commissioners, we'll move on to 7C, which is a request for possible funding and sponsorship of the Taos Living Treasures Program by the Taos County Board of Commissioners, and a conversation on the possible anti-donation issues. In the audience, we have Ms. Kathy Cordova. Promise she won't hit me today.
If you give me money, I will not hit you with ruler.
Good morning. I'm short and I have there. Thank you. Good morning, Commission Chairman, Commissioners, Mr. Malone, Assistant County Manager, and everybody else. My name is Kathy Cordova. I have been the co-chair for the Taos Living Treasures for the past 20 years. With me today, I have my husband, Arsenio, who was the co-chair for a number of years. And actually, that's how I ended up with this. He decided he wanted to go for a second master's degree, and he said, could you do Living Treasures, honey? You know, it's so wonderful, and you really enjoy it. We used to go as just to watch, see our friends get their awards, and then he became co-chair, so I knew a lot about that. I said, sure. Well, when he came back from school, I thought, he's not doing anything. And I said, you know, Arsenio, you need to start getting this year's Living Treasures going. He said, no, you're the co-chair. Oh, well, I was, yeah, and you're enjoying it, and do it. And I did enjoy it, so I said, okay, I'll continue. But as things happen, my doctor wants me to slow down a little bit. I am working a lot with our community center, and I thought that's where I live. I've done this for 20 years, so now it's time to turn the reins over. Before I do any more talking, I want to introduce the new co-chair, Lucita Trujillo. And Lucita will talk about the future of the living treasures. We promise we will be brief. And two people here, commissioners, were my former students, and they're saying, oh, right, she's going to be brief. But I promise. Okay, the living treasures. First, I want to explain my presence here today, because there are two people I want to thank very wholeheartedly. Commission Chairman Jim Fambro and Assistant County Manager Brett Taramillo. I met with them, we talked, we tried to see how we could do things, and they said, we really can't afford this. The town was footing the bill for a long time, and they said, we can't afford this, but what we want you to do, why don't you write a grant? I wrote a grant, we did not get the grant. But instead of crying boo-hoo, when they explained, Linda Perry from the town explained to me the focus this year was on people that are in poverty. We want to help the shelters. We want to help the food pantries. You know, I could not argue with that. These are things that are needed, and so I said, okay, I understand. So we did not get the grant. I also have written a number of letters. Those of you that know me, that's what I do. I write letters. I've written letters. I've talked to businessmen, owners, and nobody has come forward. So I thought, okay, the county was nice enough to listen to me. I'm going to go and ask again. So that's why I am here today. Not that I didn't appreciate the two of you or anything. It's just that I thought it's worth asking again. And I have a little slightly different focus on the budget, so that might help. What I'm going to do right now is give a very brief history. I wrote the book, The History of the Taos Living Treasures, which is at the public library. There are two different copies. In the reference section, there's one, so people can sit and look at it and do anything they need to with it. There's also one that you can check out. The library also houses the videos. And Commissioner O'Donnell did some of the videos when she had her canvas copying business. And Francis and Enrico have done some. And what we do with these videos, the town keeps one, the library keeps one, and this is the best part, the living treasures each get one. And they get to relive their day. So let's say that somebody in their family missed the ceremony. Sit down and watch this with me. And it also has been, it used to come out on Taos local TV. I remember this little girl from Albuquerque who calls me Grandma. She came running in the kitchen and she yelled, Grandma, you're on TV. And I thought, oh, sure. And I went to the TV and there it was, Living Treasures, so that was kind of neat. Living Treasures began in 1987. The first recipients were Los Bailadores del Norte. It was a dance group that preserved the old-time dances. In that group, there was a couple, the Gitanas, John and Cecilia. Their daughter, Tina, later became a co-chair. Because what happened, in all the years that I have done this, my first co-chair was Scott Lundis, who worked for the TCA, then he moved out of town. And his replacement, Maggie Considine, did it for a couple of years. She moved. And then missing person, Holly White, who I pray for her every day that they find her. Holly was my co-chair for 10 years. So we had everything down to a system, division of labor, and the whole bit. It was really, really nice. But when Holly no longer was doing this, it's like, Tina, you know what? Your parents were the first recipients. To honor the history of this, you need to come in as co-chair. So she said yes. And now we're going to be consultants for Lucita so that she can take over, and if she needs us, we're there to answer questions. I did a binder, step by step, on how to do this program. So I'm hoping that that will be helpful also. When they first started Living Treasures, Ted Agri was the founder of this. Ted worked along with the TCA, and they charged an entry fee to get in because they wanted to meet people and had to pay rent for the auditorium and these things. The entry fee didn't work. And I got to talk to Ted before he died, and I asked him what was the problem. And he said two things. Number one, people say, why do we have to pay an entry fee? That's our relative, you know, we want to go honor them. We shouldn't have to pay to go honor them. And two, they weren't getting enough money out of the fees anyway to pay the bills. So he said, I know what we're going to do. We'll have a big potluck. Potlucks worked for a while, but then I know because I tried to do a potluck for Living Treasures one year. The town had this contract, and we were using town hall for the Living Treasures. The town had a contract with a company. They were the only ones that could serve in that facility. I sat down with them, and I thought, you know, the budget, we don't have that kind of a budget for what they charge. And I said, how about salsa and chips and lemonade? We couldn't even afford that. We get about 200 people attending. So they said no. And I went to the mayor and I said, what are we gonna do? And he said, you know, there's nothing against potlucks, but we want for it to be like a restaurant or something. We got on the phone, all the restaurants were wonderful. They wanted to have the Living Treasures, and they got to give whatever they wanted. What we ended up having was a gigantic salad bar, but it was really, really nice, because all the restaurants have their special salad. But then people were saying, what about the enchiladas? What happened to those? And they got used to a full meal. So it's like, well, we tried the potluck one year, and it's hard to kind of get it together. People are bringing whatever they want. You've got to organize a table. If you don't have enough drinks, or you have no bread, or, you know, it gets a little hectic. So Ted felt that that was not very good. When the town of Taos took over the sponsorship, then they started hiring somebody to cater the food. What we found the last couple of years, because when we were doing it earlier, we didn't have this group, the Taos Culinary Arts, the Taos High School kids. It gives them experience. It gives us a really nice low price. And what they do with the profits, they use it to travel to competitions. So it's like a win-win for everybody. At the last minute last year, the Harvard said, we can't do this 3 weeks prior to the Living Treasures. And it's like, what are we going to do? And Benji came through. He said, why don't you go see Nikki McCarty? By the way, I'm a retired high school teacher, so these are my friends. And Nikki said, sure, you can use our facility. Rent-free, but you have to pay the custodians to put up the stage and do all this. And so it worked out really, really well. The Culinary Arts Kitchen was like right next door. There was a lot of parking. It worked out really, really nice. So, you know, we have different venues that we can use. Then the whole thing changed focus. It started out, if you're an artist, you can be a living treasure. The Pueblos also are involved. Taos Pueblo, Pecoris, and then 2 members at large. So instead of doing arts, it changed to volunteer service, which allowed then more people to be living treasures, but it also honored all the work that they do. The method of selection changed also. Instead of doing a committee to select people, everybody got to nominate. So somebody out there in the public would say, hey, this lady has done a lot of stuff. She founded the lunchroom program. Or this man founded, say, the animal shelter, because we were just talking about that. You know, things that people did in their everyday lives. One man founded the ARC. He had never received a major award. There we went, living treasures. So that changed, but then when we got judges, we had to look at that too, because there are different slots for judges. One of them is somebody that works with the elderly. Well, one year, we had people nominated that live at Plaza de Retiro. Somebody that lived at the Taos Living Center. The visiting nurses nominated somebody. Oh my gosh, what did we do? We found a nurse on private duty that took care of the elders. She was an excellent judge. So we kind of wait to select the judges till we know who the nominees are, because we don't want to have conflicts of interest. That's dirties the program, you know. So 4 people are always selected, sometimes more, like both bailadores. That was a huge group. Okay, I'm never going to forget the date, October 10th, 1999. And the reason for that is they were remodeling the town hall, so we had living treasures at the TCA. The TCA is not real conducive to receptions in there, but they had the stables was empty. So we had a reception at the Stables Art Center, and then the overflow out into the patio, because they didn't have the restaurant Cafe Renato. That's part of their income. They didn't have them then, so we had that whole space. And Ted Agri always attended, that was his baby. All of a sudden he stood up, I have an announcement, and everybody sighed in silence. And he said, now I can die in peace. Everybody looked at him like, what? And he said, Kathy Cordova took over, she did an excellent job, and now I can just leave it to her and die in peace. I was flabbergasted, everybody was, and I said, if Ted Agri dies tomorrow, they're gonna blame me. Well, he died, and I just do not want what he did to go. I'm gonna have to go to his grave and say, Ted, I am so sorry, but I failed you. I don't want to do that, I really don't. This will be our 25th year. Now, if you do the math, you're gonna say, wait, it started in 1987, that's more than 25 years. We had a lull where we didn't have the program for a while. So that's why it's 25. The silver anniversary, we cannot cancel it during the silver anniversary. There are some things that were added later too, like the book for the library, the videos. We had a radio program for a couple of years with Cultural Energy. And Holly and I would get a different living treasure and interview them. And that was like so joyful because people then would see who the honorees were and what they did and stuff. Also, the library has been very generous with us. They let us have the display case. They gave us a display case for May. I had to turn it down. I said, I don't even know if we're gonna have Living Treasure this year. So very quickly they put their children's programming up in the library space. But that helps us get a lot of nominations. Also, we put it on the radio, on the newspaper. You would be surprised how many nominations we get some years. Sometimes we put up flyers. This year, we are trying to get everything we can done so that Lucita will have a program to inherit. So we haven't done too much with it because we don't know if we're going to have it or not. We need your help. Now I'm going to talk about the budget. Last year we were given $5,000. I usually ask for $5,000 because to have a little cushion, but I always turn money back. I never use the whole $5,000. I never have. Last year we used $3,563.87. We did cut out a couple of things. We cut out the radio advertising. We would go around and ask people, how did you find out about this? Now, one person told us the radio. So we thought, well, if we need to trim a little bit, we'll do that. We also trimmed transportation from the budget that I submitted. We were going to have the event in Harwood. There was no parking. So we were going to get transportation from the town hall. People could park there and then they could just drive people to the bus in 2 different shifts. Well, as we were very fortunate, Mayor Baroni also wore another hat, and that was the chairman of the RTD, which we also call the Blue Bus. He said, I will get the Blue Bus for you for free. And I said, wonderful. So we were able to save money there. Then when the Harwood said, no, we can't do this anymore, then that was a dead issue. But I think that's why we probably had a little bit of money left. There are some variables we can cut down on also. The Taos News, our ad was $384.07 in tempo, but the Taos News has been very generous. With me as the writer, I have done all the profiles. And I had a deal with Joan. I'm going to give you a page and a half to do all the profiles, photos, everything. But do not let it conflict with our unsung heroes. Unsung Heroes is very different from Living Treasures. People try to say, let's combine them because of the selection process mainly. The Taos News has their committee. They select. Ours is open. Anybody can nominate somebody. In fact, one person whose nominee was selected said, I never dreamed that I would write a winning thing where my nominee would win. They couldn't believe it. A few Living Treasures, when we've called them, I got to make those calls, and it's such a joy. Can't believe it. Me? Really? You know, so it's really nice. So I think, since I used 3563.87 last year, I am suggesting we keep the food. We have to keep the custodians. If we do it at Taos High School, and that's going to be up to Lucita, the supplies are $66.50 because we have old school tables, and we covered them with dollar store plastic white tablecloths. And then I did some centerpieces, and I had some of the materials, so I just bought the material I didn't have, and we had centerpieces, and people were allowed to take them, so they loved that. I think we need to keep the DVDs, but if we need to cut down the Taos News, we can. If we need for me not to do the book, I don't have to do it. Usually I get $200 to do the book. Last year I got $250, but there was a reason. Every 5 years we do a new volume, and then I have to buy binders and all that stuff. By the way, the money they pay goes for Xeroxing and materials to produce as well. So that's where some of it goes. So we'll go down to 200 next year, but we can cut that out if you feel we need to. And I think we could do this for $3,500. Even though I do ask for $5,000 for my little cushion. We could just say we don't have a cushion this year, but I would hate to see it go. Now I'm going to ask our senior to talk about the recipients.
I'm going to talk as long as you gave the lady from the animal shelter. Living Treasures is a really wonderful thing, you know, and it's something like your Employee of the Month, your Employee of the Year that you honor with different places. But this is much deeper because you recognize the contributions of people in your communities. You know, it's just been a wonderful thing. When Ted Avery asked me to be a co-chair, and also Carol Kadam with the TCA, I accepted that. And it was such a pleasure to be able to do and honor these people. It's all volunteer, you know. It's just you know, when we do these particular programs, and some of the people that have not been recognized, unsung heroes, have been recognized throughout our county. You know, just people that have contributed. You know, today we see we're trying. I see a new trend in our community. You know, tomorrow we have a planning and zoning commission meeting where we're going to propose removing the Veterans Memorial, removing Padre Martinez from the park because they want to have open space for concerts. You know, and cutting down trees. You know, it's just unbelievable what I have seen in my lifetime here. But this program for 25 years, you know, at one point Mayor Leandro Cordova cut it out. That was the lull that Kathy was talking about, and decided that it wasn't worthwhile. But the people spoke and it came back. You know, we had some of the living treasures attend the council meetings and talk about what an honor it was for them to receive that particular award. Unsung heroes, you know, so many other people that have laid the foundation for our community, have laid the foundation of our values in this community. And to see the trends go away, you know, this is something that you as commissioners have an opportunity to honor the people in your community. And I don't have anything to do with right now with the budget or anything like that, but you know, I'm glad that we were able to support that, and we don't get paid. You know, it's all volunteer for our community. It's like the community center and things like those things that we get involved in because we feel they're worthwhile. I'm a historian, and people without a knowledge of their history is like a tree without any roots. The Living Treasures is a program that makes us aware of those roots, makes us aware of those particular people that carried on the traditions, the culture that is so important to anybody. You know, just when we honor these people and we pass it on to their children and to their grandchildren, it really, really is great. You know, my grandmother used to say that we die 3 times. We die when we breathe our last. We die a second death when we are buried. And a third death, and most tragic, when we are forgotten And when we do this, when we don't recognize the contributions of people in our community, we are exactly doing that. We are making them die a tragic death. So I hope that, we'll find a way, just, if there's 5 commissioners, $1,000 times 5. If we can't do it through the community, but we do honor our employees, we do honor, people here. I've been here when we're going to give you a day with pay. Well, that takes away a whole day when we do it every month, and we pay for those things. But to honor the people in our community is very, very important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Ms. Trujillo. I am the recipient of last year's award. And Kathy asked me I thought it was just to help. I didn't know I was going to be leading this program. And so I said, okay. But so now I'm going to make it short. I don't really have a whole lot to say right now because, like I said, I'm fairly new. And I'm not going to be filling her shoes. I'm going to walk alongside. So first of all, we do need planning time. And that's to first look for the place, food vendors. We also need a date when we're going to hold this ceremony and the time. Judging, we first have to call for nominations, selection of judges, notification to the honorees, working with the pueblos. And then, of course, we need funding. And no funding, no program. And we do have a good transition plan. Like she said, she did give me her binder. I've gone over it to know what is expected of me. And I'm also involved with the Taos Community Center. I am the board secretary. I'm also part-time librarian and caretaker. I do have classes for children on Saturday. I teach ceramics, I also teach sewing. I do have a dance group, Celestial Dance Group, and we practice there. So I'm very involved in the center. And we've also agreed to be the fiscal agent for the Living Treasure Program. And as last year's recipient, it was a great honor to receive this. And I told Kathy when she called me that I had been chosen. I said, well, for what? I'm just doing what I like to do. And I think that happens a lot of times in our lives. We just keep on doing and doing, not realizing that we're doing something for the community. And for me, yes, I'm doing something for the children of our community. So with that, I guess that's all I've got to say. And thank you very much. I look forward to working with you. Thank you. One more thing.
We talked about the transition plan. And there's one person sitting there thinking, oh no. When we talked about the county being involved with this, Anissa and Billy, who can't graduate and get a waiver, like 2 of the commissioners I know, was, I guess, told or asked or something if she would be the liaison between the county and the Living Treasures Committee. And so she is kind of, if you guys say yes, I guess she's stuck with Mrs. C and her friends again. Okay, that's part of our transition. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner,
I'm the one that have been in contact with Mrs. Cordova the last few weeks to see about possible sponsorship of the Taos Living Treasures program, and I believe the town of Taos in the past has done it. And I would like for us to see how we can sponsor for this year and see how it works. I know that we can't make that decision today, but if we could at least direct staff, I know I was in communication with Leandro just the last couple of days when I asked this item to be placed on the agenda, and I know Mr. Malone probably feels that we cannot sponsor something like this, but we could possibly sponsor it through the Taos Community Center, if I understand correctly, where the funds would be available for that specifically. So I would like for staff to look into this and then come back with this on the next commission agenda so that we can say yes or no on this.
Okay, and to let you know also, we've met with Ms. Cordova numerous times on this, and we've tried, with the lodger's tax route, we went any creative way that we could to keep this going. And so I don't know if the community center angle that you're proposing is something that works. I guess that would be up to Bob.
We'll certainly look into it, but I got to be honest with you with my top of the head reaction. The community center is also a nonprofit, and just giving the community center the money to do the program doesn't avoid the donation cost.
I know Leandro mentioned a specific way as to how this could be done, and so looking forward to staff being able to look into this and coming back to some.
If we make the recipients dogs in this town, we get funded right away.
He's afraid I'm gonna give him that dog look.
All right, so your idea is to
And I'm,
to see
yes,
if we can.
and Mr. Chairman, not asking for the $5,000. You know, Ms. Cordova said that they could get away with $3,500, more or less.
And they're up to it again afterwards.
We're looking at more like $4,000 if possible.
I just like to say, lodger's tax idea came about because you'd be surprised how many people come from out of town during that particular time. They, it's like the Dennis Hopper Day, okay, in town. We fund something like that, and people come from out of town and they stay at the lodgers, with the lodgers here in Taos. Real interesting, when it was canceled the last time, we had all these people that had already been informed, and when the town canceled it, people had to cancel their lodging, they had to cancel their reservations because they were going to come to 100 people. It's surprising because if we look at the population trends, a lot of our young people are not, we're not providing opportunities for them to come back to town, so they live out of town. And they have, when somebody is honored, at least in my culture, we have these big fiestas that everybody comes into town. We see it for the fiestas every year when my family comes to the Taos fiestas and we have a family reunion. I can't put them all up, so they do stay here at the lodging.
You could entertain them, you could feed them and all that. I just know.
I'll send them to you next time.
Well, the culinary arts can feed them at the big trade.
Commissioner,
This tax has to be spent on that.
advertising.
That's, I'm sure you do some, but it doesn't be useful for operations.
All right, well, I think that's pretty good discussion, and we'll see where it goes. Thank you. All right. Next, under contracts, agreements, MOUs, RFPs, and bids, we have discussion, consideration, and decision regarding approval of purchase for food expense for Taos Senior Center through CES Contract fiscal year 16-17. Elsa Vigil, our Chief Procurement Officer. Ms. Vigil.
Good morning, Chairman and Commission. Within the packet that was provided for this agenda item is a breakdown of funds for raw food to the different grant agreements that have for the senior center. So one's for raw food, one's due to NSIP, and the other part is kitchen supplies. And we are requesting approval through the CES contract, which we currently use this last fiscal year for all foods and supplies for the senior center in the amount of $134,450. That is the full amount for the entire year. for this entire program to do all the foods and whatever kitchen supplies are necessary and needed, right down to the frozens, to the dry, to aprons, gloves, you name it, to produce those foods for Meals on Wheels as well as for each senior center that they do 5 days a week.
This is at $134,450.
Yes, and the way we're going to allocate that in order to keep track of it and to keep it in play throughout the entire fiscal year 16-17, we're going to encumber the first half for the first half of the year and keep track of the spending trend. And then in January, we will then incorporate a new purchase order for the remainder of the year. So that way we're not running short. But this is my understanding of the full budget for the year for the purchase of food and kitchen supplies for the senior centers.
Move for approval, Mr. Chairman.
Second. And a second. Discussion. Clerk call the roll.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Yes.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenham?
Yes.
Chairman Fabro?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next item is discussion, consideration, and decision regarding approval of Contract TCC-2016-045, contract between Taos County and Universal Professional Services for lobbying services for Taos County in connection with the 2017 legislative session. Mr. Agnew?
Thank you, Chairman, members of the commission. Mr. Cordova regrets that he wasn't able to be here today. It's his recommendation to the Board of Commission that we enter into a contract with Universal Professional Services for this current fiscal year of 16-17 to provide lobbying services. And I stand for any questions.
I would just like one thing in the contract or something spelled out to where we get either weekly or some kind of report from him what's going on.
Yes, Chairman, Leandro did meet with Mr. Cisneros last week, and we did talk about reporting more before the commission. So Mr. Cisneros is aware of that.
Mr.
An
Chairman.
email or something, you know, on a regular basis, what's going on.
Mr. Chairman, who owns Universal Professional Services?
Gabriel Cisneros.
And we contracted with them previously?
Yes, this past fiscal year, we contracted with Mr. Cisneros' firm, and he was our registered lobbyist during the legislative session.
And does he represent other entities besides the county during the legislature?
Yes, I believe he represents other local governments in the area and
The schools, the town?
I don't think any school districts, probably Village of Cuesta, Town of Red River, Wagon Mound, Eagle Nest. And I'm not sure about Eagle Nest anymore, but in the past used to do Eagle Nest and Cimarron.
Are there others that have approached the county about lobbying?
To my knowledge, nobody's approached Mr. Cordova regarding lobbying for the county. Mr. Cordova was happy with the deliverables, other than reporting more to the commission, but all the deliverables as far as funding for that we received through the session, which was the money for the Old County Courthouse. We did get 1 unit for the Sheriff's Department, and we also got some additional funds. I can't remember off the top of my head, but in other years, the county has contracted with Mr. Cisneros for the Sheriff's Department exclusively, and we've received, every time he's lobbied for the Sheriff's Department, we have received funding for vehicles, and we wanted to combine lobbying services, and in the past, the sheriff's budget just paid for that. And this year, the sheriff's budget was able to use that funds elsewhere and within their budget. Oh, and Mr. Malone had his hand up, Chairman.
No,
Oh.
I was gonna ask a question after we. I could ask it now if it's appropriate. Mr. Chairman, did you want the contract to be changed to reflect the comment about the briefings to the commissioner? Is that something that you're comfortable just the vendor agreeing to do? There's already a provision that you provide weekly briefings to the county manager.
Okay, that's fine, just so then we get those. So that's.
I was just going to add to that, Mr. Chair, I do agree that if there's a calendar schedule, that there may be some meetings that the lobbyist would be attending in Santa Fe. If it's already passed on to the manager, deputy manager, commissioner may need to assist in that meeting or that session. I think that would be most appropriate for Mr. Simmons to pass it along. But if it's already been passed through the manager, we'll just make sure that he gives us an opportunity to run.
Okay.
With that, I would make a motion to approve the contract 216-45 with Universal Procurement Services.
I'll second that motion.
I was personally contacted by someone else that's in that business, but I don't know if they went through whichever means to meet with Mr. Porter or Mr. Javier, just so Mr. Bill,
Mr. Chairman, I was as well, by two different entities, and so I was just kind of wondering if everybody had been given an opportunity to speak to Mr. Cordova, our county manager, or to staff, as to what the deliverables would be with regards to lobbying efforts for Taos County. I have to admit to the public that I really feel that, and nothing against Mr. Cisneros, that this is a lot of times a waste of money for government entities to have to pay out lobbyists to speak in behalf of an entity, a government entity, when in fact we've elected officials, our senator and our representative, to do a lot of this work for us already. And we ourselves, we have staff, we have our manager and us as commissioners, that we have a responsibility to do this already. And so many times I feel that to pay someone to just go out there and parade and play politics is not necessarily our best way of spending public money.
Mr. Chair, I guess my question to Mr. Rose is to eliminate this contractual service altogether, as opposed to trying to find other entities.
I was hoping that Mr. Cordova would have been here to speak more about what he's done, what he has done. Mr. Javier, I don't know what the office has done, the administration has done with regards to making sure that we do have the best lobbyists out there speaking on behalf of Taos County. And the other problem that I have is a lot of times these lobbyists, they not only have a contract with Taos County, but also with every single other entity, with the schools and the municipalities. I don't know if the Village of Quest has hired him. I don't know if Red River has hired him. But to me, I see that as a conflict of interest when they go over to the legislature and try to pretend like they're representing one single entity when in fact they're representing 10 different entities at the same time.
So Commissioner Romero, first you're saying you don't think that we should be spending this amount of money on a lobbyist, but then you're saying, is that the best office out there?
If we are going to spend this amount of money, then I want to make sure that everybody that provides the service was spoken to or contacted to make sure that they can provide the best possible service. And we have plenty of time, I don't know when you could wait until Mr. Cordova came back.
I just know that the committee meetings begin.
So, yeah, yeah. But if we could wait till Mr. Cordova came back and have him provide some input as to what he has done.
Is the contract renewal or did it go out to publication?
It's not a contract renewal, it's a new contract within the procurement and purchasing. It's right at 35,001 cents, I believe. Mr. Cordova had it within his authority to sign a contract with Mr. Cisneros, but he felt it was more transparent to come before the commission to ask them for that. So that's why it's on the agenda today. He felt it was less transparent for him to sign it. He would also tell you, if you were standing here, that in recent memory, this last legislative session is the best the county's done in quite a few years, and he feels that's reflective of the work Mr. Cisneros has done for the county. In other years, we haven't gotten that much capital outlay funds or CDBG funds, so he felt that we did good this last legislative session, and that's why he was recommending universal professional services. I cannot speak to if he's spoken with other firms. I just know what he's done regarding universal professional services.
And it's up to $35,000, and it's based on invoices from Mr. Cisneros, so it could be less, but it's based on actual work completed.
Correct.
And I'll stand by my second of Commissioner Gallegos' motion. I have faith in the county manager's discretion in this matter.
Well, I'm certainly glad, Mr. Chairman, that he decided to come this route to have that decision made with regards to a lobbyists.
I certainly do feel that we got our money's worth last year. And for a note, he was at the CDBG hearing that I attended on behalf of the county a month ago, a little over a month ago. He did speak on our behalf as well at that event. So just to let you know that. Any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Vice Chair Gallegos,
Yes.
Commissioner Romero,
I'm not staying on this one.
Commissioner Blankenhorn,
Yes.
Chairman Fabro.
Yes. Okay. Next, let's see if I can go with the following. In department matters, we have under 9A, a progress report on various roads being worked on by various utility companies, including the Llano-Quemado Mutual Domestic and Valle de los Ranchos Water and Sanitation. I believe this was brought to our attention by Commissioner Romero, and Mr. Salazar will be presenting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I read to you a progress report from various, actually two utility companies that are working on some roads, and one of them is Llano-Quemado Mutual Domestic Water, and the other one is the Valle de los Ranchos Water and Sanitation. And as of today, Llano-Quemado has laid 16,000 feet of 8-inch, 6-inch, and 4-inch water line. And they are done laying the water line. They're just doing a few more hookups that they need to do. And then they should start patching up the work that they cut out on the pavements. We've had some issues with them, so we've gone back to them to correct some of the problems that we came across. So we set a meeting with the managers and went ahead and correct and gave them a list of stuff that they needed to correct that we saw that were not getting addressed. And Valle de los Ranchos Water Sanitation, as of today, has laid 6,486 feet of 8-inch sewer line. They have 7 road cut permits. They taking out 6, they lack 1 more. They're on Camino de Valerio right now. They finished Espinosa, Tros, Camino Abajo de la Loma intersection with Tros, and Camino Abajo de la Loma intersection with Espinosa, and Camino Abajo de la Loma with the intersection of state highways. So,
Mr. Chairman, thank you to the staff for placing this on the agenda at my request. One of the things that I had seen with the mutual domestic about a month or so ago was that I was at a meeting for VIII, and they were working in front of our offices, and they were using, they had just dug out a deep trench for the line. And they were basically just using topsoil from a berm near the county road to fill in that trench. And then they were compacting that topsoil. And my understanding is that you use gravel or other material that's heavier so that it doesn't sink when it gets wet. And true to what I'm saying, this weekend when we had the really big storms, there was a trench that was cut on the east side of Yankimau, in the middle of the road. That became basically a mud ditch, and people were driving on it, and it was just becoming a really rough surface to drive through. All of a sudden it became a lot of mud. And so I'm just kind of wondering if they're going to pull out that topsoil and replace it with gravel. How come they didn't do that in the first place? And then the other concerns that I have are that last week, for example, I think it was on Wednesday or Thursday of last week, I started to get some phone calls, is that they had to break some pavement off the edges of the road, and they left chunks of pavement on the surface, on the highway, on the road surface. And I thought, well, maybe they'll clean it, so I drove by again later on after they were done. At the end of the workday, chunks of pavement and dirt were still on the road. That becomes a liability for the county. We get sued. Everybody else gets sued if someone is hurt because of an accident on the surface. And so I want to make sure that these things get addressed at the end of every day to make sure that they're done correctly. When I was driving through there, they were poking at the edges of the road, trying to get soil to fill in some crevices that they had created with their machinery. I had never seen that happen, and I'm not sure if they're trying to save money at the expense of the county or how they're doing it, but those are things that we need to address at the end of every day to make sure that they're done properly. And that's why I asked them to be placed on the agenda.
These are contractors that we hired?
No, Mr. Chairman, they are contractors that file construction's the name of the company that was hired by the Yankimau Mutual Domestic. As far as the work of the VIII Ranchos, we do have an engineer, Alex Vigil, and Ivan Valerio, who are on that work, and it appears like it's been done, taken care of properly.
well, I got your message, and when I went to check on it, and I do agree that at some point they used a little bit of dirt on one of the cuts. The rest of the road looked good. As a matter of fact, Mr. Cordova drove by right after I did, and he thought it was also good. I mean, they are going to replace the topsoil and put base course, tamp it down before they put down their asphalt. Their asphalt job wasn't good at all. It was horrible. We addressed them that they got to do it correct. As far as the asphalt pieces that were on the road, I drove right after you called me, and I didn't see any. But they were not on the road. They were on the side of the road.
Someone might have cleared them off.
So I addressed for them to take.
It's the loop around Llano from where Butters lives, from the Capilla, all the way up around to the west side.
Okay,
Where it joins with West Romero Road. Yeah, check it out.
Yeah, and I had to remove all the piles of dirt that were on the, so there's no asphalt, there's no dirt, there's nothing there.
But they have been using topsoil to fill in.
I haven't, when I've been there, I haven't not noticed that, but I take documents of every time I go see them, who I talk to, what we talked about. I've gone with Mr. Jaramillo, I've gone with Mr. Cordova. We've never found any bad problems that we could, other than different things that we decide to kind of address right at the time, and they take care of it right away. As far as why I take documents when I go visit over there too. They supposedly it's supposed to have an engineer and an inspector there at all times. They're not there at all times. I've had to kind of address some stuff on their part too. They were trying to get away with 1.5 inches of asphalt on the patching instead of the 3 inches that I called for, just because they have the mentality that they're going to do an overlay. So we kind of cleared that up. They corrected it too. I've asked that Mr. Valdez will be there. I've been there several times where he hasn't been there. I've addressed a few things that they were supposed to have had, that metal barrier that when they're digging 8 feet under the ground and they don't have it. And I kind of told them that they kind of have to stop unless they put that thing. But since they have so many utilities going across, it's hard to put that metal box to be in there, So both companies have their issues, and it's just something that we're addressing it. Every time I go out there, we find something and we address it, and they take care of it. And I'm sure File Construction is going to be taking care of the list that we gave them. I think I sent you an email on that.
All I can say, Mr. Chairman, is that, I'm very familiar with these roads, having been on the commission for 14 years now, off and on. We've spent thousands, if not millions of dollars on county roads, and in this area specifically, the pavement has always been 3 inches, 2.5, 3 inches. And we've had really great roads up until the time when they started to cut them to put in these utilities. And granted, we do need these utilities. They're a great service to our community. But at the same time, they need to leave that road at least in the same condition that it was, if not better.
Right.
And I don't see that happening. Hopefully now that you've gotten more involved with them, that it'll change. But I just wanted to make sure that the commission was made aware of what I've seen.
And I always tell them that it'll never be the same. Once they cut through the roads, it's like cutting your finger off, and they put it back, it's not going to work the same. So the roads aren't going to look the same. If they can do at least a good job to make it last the time that they're there.
And with that, Mr. Chairman, then I think we need to seriously look at raising the amounts of that bonding money that is left in place to make sure that these repairs do meet the specifications of the county.
And another thing I would like to see is that we get together more with more utilities companies and organize what's in the future, because right now we're going to have an overlay on Valerio Road, and the water line that they busted, because they did bust the water line, is older than heck, so it won't be too much longer before they're going to want to run a water line. So it's like we're going to be putting new asphalt, and then we're going to be cutting the asphalt again to put the water line. Well, we could be right now at this stage putting sewer, putting water, all the utilities, gas, whatever it takes, and then come in with an overlay. But
that one part, we share the part of the road, Westwood Meadow Road, where some construction happened a couple of years ago. That the side of the road is just deteriorating. I've seen it with you, I've seen it with Mr. Medina, my foreman, because it wasn't put, the drainage wasn't put back right. And it's sad, because that was a beautiful road, and it's completed.
And it's a recent job.
Yeah.
And just to let you know that last week we took a walk around, right?
And I was unable to.
And we're gonna do another one. We're gonna hopefully do another one where both of you guys can walk around. But we found around 9 issues that Alex is aware of, and they're gonna go back and fix up what we found.
That's good.
But we would like to invite both of you guys to take another walk around to see maybe something you guys see that we missed.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Earl.
Okay.
Anything else?
If you're going to pave Buena Vista Road instead of Valerio Road, I'll take that right now. I mean, we don't have no utilities there. We can really pave a lot of our areas up there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Earl. County Manager's report, Mr. Alamino.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the Commission. I'd like to inform the Commission that DFA has approved our preliminary budget, so the Finance Department has opened up our purchase order process. The bids are due on July 7th for both the Chancel transfer site, and that's for the Solid Waste Department, and for San Cristobal Camino del Medio. So we had a pre-bid meeting last week, and there were about 4 contractors that showed up for Chancel, 5 that showed up for San Cristobal. So we should get a fairly good bids. We're also in the process of negotiating a contract with Angel Fire for dispatch services. We're still in the preliminary phase of that. I know Mr. Malone's working on that as well as Mr. Martinez, but I wanted to report on that. We have begun dispatching for Taos Pueblo on July 1st. Mr. Martinez said as of today we've had no issues. The sculpture will be installed on the base by the end of this week. That's per Mr. Sanchez will get done this week. Notice of quorum has been issued for the governor's visit tomorrow at the Taos Plaza at 2 o'clock. Town of Taos is also asking for a head count of the commissioners that will be attending. And Commissioner O'Donnell had already indicated that she would be in attendance. So they want us to give that to
I'll be there.
Chairman and Commissioner.
I'll be there in both capacities. Don't take this card and stop talking.
Tommy, you gonna go hang out with the gov?
Would you like to show up?
That's possible.
I guess there's a photo too, so that's the other reason why I had camera.
Bigger camera.
I will let you know. I have to check my schedule.
Okay.
So 2 o'clock on the clock.
2 o'clock, and then if it's raining, the fallback is inside the mill room, so that's the fallback location. So on this coming Monday, the cabinet will be hosting the New Mexico Finance Authority Oversight Legislative Committee. So they'll be here a full day on Monday and a half day on Tuesday. So if you get a chance on Monday or Tuesday, please drop by and say hello to our legislators. So it's going to be tight quarters in here, but we'll see how it works out. At the end of August, it hasn't been confirmed. The Health and Human Services Legislative Committee wants to meet here for 2.5 days. So that's the committee along with LLC that also looks at the funding formulas for the hospital and safety care in that pool. So that would probably be good if you guys would like to attend that as well.
Maybe we could hang the signs with various funding needs from the roof. They can see them.
Next Tuesday, we'll also be having a special meeting at the Old County Courthouse because the legislators being here. So we'll be providing an HR update. Ms. Weber will be letting you know what she's working on. As you've seen, we've had a couple of department heads come in and give presentations to what they're working on. And also we'll be updating where we stand with the architect. Leandro, by that time, should have had a meeting with the architect. We don't have a contract in place as of yet, so we still need to work out the scope of work. So he'll update the commission on that at next Tuesday's special meeting. And that's kind of, I'm sorry?
That's at 9 next Tuesday?
Yes.
At the Oak County Court.
I stand for any questions? Oh, Anissa did send out the calendar on Friday. What we have done for the next 2.5 months. I know we're going to start talking ICIP, which is on there, that's due September 1st. So Ms. Montoya will be coming in July and the August meeting, so give that some thought as well. We're really trying to clean up the ICIP list. And stand for any questions.
Thank you, Brent. Okay, on Commissioners, reports and matters. The first item is discussion only regarding a possible ordinance restricting or banning the use of glyphosate.
I believe that's how it's pronounced.
Okay, and other possible harmful herbicides and pesticides in Taos County. Commissioner Romero, do you have some information you want to share with us?
Not a whole lot at this time, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, I know that I have been, you know, when I used to work at Ace Hardware, I used to head their garden department. And one of the most disturbing things about the things that we used to sell there at the nursery and at Ace Hardware was the fact that we sold a lot of Roundup and a lot of these chemicals, that herbicides, pesticides that people buy in order to take care of insect problems or weed problems around the house, their fields. And it would always disturb me to see that a lot of people would buy a lot of this stuff, and you know, when you walk in there, we would have to use masks because it smelled so horrible. And we had ventilation systems to keep that area ventilated. People sometimes would complain of headaches and this and that when they finished their day of work there at Ace Hardware. And one of the things that I always saw was that a lot of our customers would buy a lot of this stuff by the ton, by the gallon, and then they'd go out and pour it in their fields and in their yards, and then they'd come back and complain about their children itching and developing headaches and hives and all sorts of complaints, their animals dying, their pets dying, all these things that would come back and haunt the owner of the store and us as employees of the store as well. And I thought, well, you know, I still wasn't on the county commission at the time. This is something that we need to address. And this was 15 years ago or so. I feel the time has come, Mr. Chairman, to address this. I have, in the past couple of days, been in communication and contact with Mr. Fritz Hahn, who had some similar discussion on his Facebook page. As you all know, Mr. Hahn is our town of Taos counselor, one of our counselors, and he is kind of the one that is spearheading this ordinance for the town of Taos. And I would like us to consider doing the same here at the county. And so I too made my views public through Facebook this weekend, and it attracted a lot of attention. And I believe there are two individuals who I have not met personally yet that hopefully can speak to the issue and the reason why we need an ordinance in Taos County.
Along those lines, someone that was here earlier that had to leave left a statement and asked me to read it. Tammy, the spelling of the last name is D''G-A-I-A. The first name is Claire, so Claire DeGuy. To the Taos County Commissioners, I would like to offer my comments in 2 points on today's agenda. And I'll read the one that pertains to this item. The other one is regarding the discussion she had with Mr. Patten. Pretty good to read, but it doesn't pertain to this. Regarding the banning the use of glyphosate and other herbicides and pesticides in Taos County. Research has substantiated humans these days have glyphosate, one of several very toxic ingredients in Roundup. It's in our bodies whether or not we have personally used Roundup, which causes illness to our bodies. I support the banning of these products. I support all using goats to harvest noxious weeds and the use of agricultural vinegar, a much higher concentration which kills weeds. You will be supporting everyone's health, soil, water, and people by banning these poisons. So that's the statement by Ms. DeGuy. All right?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe there are two individuals, Mr. Chairman, if we could allow them time to come before.
Go ahead and state your name for the record.
Sure.
And thanks for being here this afternoon.
Sure. My name is Julie Shedko, and I'm a local farmer. and our farm is called Let Us Grow Farm. And we are located in El Prado, 1010 Francis Road, and we have a great acequia system that we use to farm with. And we also are a local hub for farmers. We buy their local produce and we redistribute, because we found that they don't have time to do everything. So I'm up and down the road a lot moving produce. I'm a produce pusher. We have a property that is located at the top of Upper Ranchitos and, I wrote it down because I get nervous. It's Upper Ranchitos and Millicent Rogers Road. And it's a new development, and to my understanding, it's common protocol to come in and spray a property before you develop it and then scrape it. So when I drove by on June 20th of this year, this was the picture of the gentleman spraying. And I just pulled over, because to me, this was super, I mean, I wept for myself, I wept for Mother Earth, I wept for our bees. I'm a beekeeper, and in the last year, we've lost 48% of our bees. I've lost all of my bees. Unfortunately, these type of applications are affecting me health-wise. What happens is I don't have the genes to process these out, so they dump into my brain, and I've been diagnosed with MS and rheumatoid arthritis at the age of 53. And I was healthy when I got here 6 years ago. So to me, I think this is a real knock at the door, like we need to wake up. We need to make sure we're not poisoning our kids, ourselves. The ecosystem that runs along that acequia is now damaged. These sprays kill the environment for our insects. And so I'm just here pleading to just say that it would be beneficial to Mother Earth, to the ecosystem, to our food supply, and to continue to allow farmers to grow food. Unfortunately, the people that will come onto this land will never know that happened. They will try to grow food. They will try to make a living there. And so I just think, and the sad part of this too, is that worker is not protected at all. He probably doesn't even know what he's spraying. So I literally have to roll up my windows. I can't have my windows down when I go by there. And to me, I just think we can do better than that. We should do better than that. So I would support banning it. I know I'm a group of women farmers also that support that these things be banned. I did start a petition. I'm not a petition person. I'm here to come from a place of love and to help correct what we've done for 4 decades now to our land. And so I appreciate you taking the time and listening to me, and I'd be happy to be on any committee, any information I can give from a farmer standpoint, and a human being that is suffering, and a beekeeper. So thank you for your time, and it was interesting being here with you this morning. I actually came from Colorado. I worked for the town of Avon there for 10 years, and so I understand this process, but it was nice to be able to be here with you. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Mr. Chairman, Julie, thank you so much. How does it affect beehives and beekeepers?
Well, a lot of it is they're still trying to figure that out, but what they have found is it messes up their mapping mechanism to get back to the hive. So, and one of the hardest things to do here is overwinter bees, number one, just because of climate. But then the second part comes into, those are the times people start spraying, right? Early spring, the bees come out, you know, and then there's all these sprays, and they're trying to get filled up from a long winter to get some more honey in there. But there's going to be, we're really going to start doing some talks about that as well, because 48% is huge, and to just buy a beehive, like I'm just buying them myself, so it's $150 for every hive. I've been beekeeping here for 6 years, and I've never been able to keep a hive. That doesn't say I'm not a good beekeeper. I mean, that's probably part of it, because there are times when they swarm and leave and take their honey too, so I'm not doing my job. But yeah, it's a big deal, and again, they pollinate 3 of every 4 foods we eat, so if we don't have bees, we're not going to have food. So I'm probably the canary in the coal mine here, so when I'm gone, next will be the bees, and the next will be food. So it's just really important to me to make sure that, you know, these kids don't have to be exposed to these things. Because it is part of causing autism, as they're finding too, and cancers and other things. But, you know, to me, for me, automatically just burns my face. I have a very hard sensitivity to it. So, any other questions? Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Filkey.
I want to, I can't add much more to what this lady wound up talking about. We have an organic farm. They stringent rules on being organic, our neighbor. In fact, they were featured recently in the Taos News, Boxcar Farm. And we're organic, except we don't have to be commercial. But I'm concerned about any neighbors that might want to do aerial spraying without the rest of us knowing about it. There should be some kind of licensing or some kind of provision where they can't just spray and then you got overspray. But the bees are our pollinators, and it's not something we can afford to lose. I fully support, but you know, I wonder how you do a restriction on them. They have products that work better, and I go on weed patrol every morning for salsify, for Canadian thistle, and for burdock mainly. And they have a product at Petrie's and probably Rio Grande's also. It's like a vinegar product. You spray on broadleaf and it gets rid of what you want, what you don't want, the cracks in the concrete or anything that usually they would spray for, except for developments. Now that's a huge thing, and I've heard local gardening contractors say that they don't like to use it, but it gets rid of all weeds. And then they can proceed with whatever they want to develop on the property. I don't want to go on. Thank you.
Yes.
My name's Andrea Zacaras, and I live up on Rim Road in the Secos Montes area, and I too am a beekeeper. And I just wanted to reiterate what Julie was talking about. We had a meeting, we have a meeting every end of February, early March. Some of the beekeepers here in the community, and part of the discussion is not only the pesticides and herbicides, but we do a little survey on how many people, how they did with their bees in the last year. And so the 2016 meeting focused on the bees from 2015, and over half our members lost over half of their hives this year. And again, you can't specifically blame it on the pesticides or the herbicides. Some of it is weather related, but again, most of the hives were lost when the weather turned warm. So it is something to consider, because that is when people start to spray. And I just needed to put my 2 cents in and say, please consider it. So many of the crops and produce and fruit that we grow in this county are reliant solely on bees. And so it's something that we all need to consider. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry. One more thing. Not only would we like it banned, but when you were saying, Chairman, this is what ACE sends out in the mailbox. So this hits every P.O. box in the county with a coupon to buy poison. So if we could also have it not be able to be sold, because a lot of times people don't read the directions, they just assume it's on the shelf, it's fine, and they go home and apply it. And Roundup's application has gotten stronger. And I can get you the numbers, but it just keeps getting stronger and stronger and stronger. So it would be really nice if this didn't show up and encourage people to do that. That was my last piece. Thank you.
Councilmember Hahn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. I just want to start by thanking you. Your job is difficult, time-consuming. You're required to try and look at all sides to the story, and I appreciate your efforts and all the public public service that you do. That being said, what I propose to the council during our matters from staff, since it's coming at that point on the agenda, really all we can do is try and find consensus and have it placed on a future agenda. So what will be placed next Tuesday is this question. I'd like a staff report, if there's been enough time, on what other municipalities are doing to consider restrictions or outright banning. I've asked legal to give us an opinion as to whether we actually have jurisdiction in this area. I have asked that we get professional consultation on this matter and that we really try and create a collaborative approach with the county. That being said, I think it's important for the public to know that if you feel there has been a transgression, I'm going to give you a phone number to write down. It's with the New Mexico Department of Agriculture, and they are serious about investigations. So they're the people that investigate the quality of meats, milk, etc. So that number is 575-646-2134. I was encouraged to give that number out. So to get you up to speed on the rest of it then, I had an interesting conversation with our county extension agent, Tony Valdez, very adept in these matters. He informed me that the EPA will be coming out with its conclusory statement in the fall regarding this particular product. And so we look forward to that. I had a lengthy meeting this morning with Mr. Peter Vigil over at Taos Soil and Water. I'm not a biologist. I don't believe anyone on the council is. I don't know about you all, but we need some professional guidance here. And Peter's suggestion was that we get in touch with the New Mexico Department of Agriculture, let them know what we're looking at, what the concerns are, and invite them up. Or it may be that we perhaps have to go down for maybe a joint session or a work study, something like that, to really get our heads around this. Peter was confident they could answer all of those questions. And then I won't get into the rest of it, just glancing quickly at my notes. Staffing, if there are numerous issues we've got to look at here. It's not going to be quite as simple as banning or restricting, because if we ban or restrict, then we have things coming in from other counties, and actually Colorado is a pretty serious transgressor on these in some circles, so they're just 90 miles away. But we need their guidance. At that point, what Peter suggested, then that would be the time to bring in, say, Tony over at the Extension Service, or maybe even during that meeting, maybe Peter at that same kind of get-together. So I thought that was very helpful, kind of gave me, anyway, a path forward as we try and give. I think we want to be careful to not point at a product. This is a concern of mine, and say, you, herbicide named whatever, are guilty. I think that could open us up for a liability. Now, certainly there's been a lot of scientific work done, and it certainly looks negative. But I think we want to look at the general category of glyphosates. I've been mispronouncing it all week long too, but glyphosate, G-L-Y-P-H-O-S-A-T-A, long O, long A. So that's my 2 bits on this, pending your decision. I know the council is very interested in this, and yes, we're getting lots of emails. And it's a concern. It's also a concern at Taos Soil and Water, and a concern with the county extension agent. So we have our work to do, and I would caution us to investigate prior to judgment. Not to defend any product, just to really assure the public that we're going at this in a holistic manner. Thank you for your time, and thanks for your service.
Thank you. Mr. Chair.
Councilor Hunt, what communities can we learn from that have done this around the country or within the region that kind of fast tracks us to an extent where we don't have staff? I mean, I think that it's, you know, as a former councilor, as a mayor, and as a commissioner, I think that, you know, we do have projects that we think are going to be beneficial to the whole community, but I think at the same time, we want to make sure we're tackling this in a manner that doesn't overburden staff on all of this. And I think if we can use the community engagement that may have been, you know, basically just have been familiar with this in other communities, that they may be able to help us reach out to get that information sooner than us trying to reinvent something that's already been run through some other mill that we might be able to just feed off of and then tweak it ourselves. So if we go ahead and pursue this route, Mr. Chair, maybe we have some kind of small discussion between the county and town of Taos as to a small brainstorm and see if we can find some templates that are out there without putting too much hours in this.
Yeah, I wonder if NMAC has access to it.
Not the NMAC, but I know Mr. Hahn has done some research already, and I know that through Facebook, I have had the opportunity to meet a lot of people who have that research already, and they've suggested various communities. Not many in New Mexico. We haven't been able to find anything in New Mexico yet that has worked on such an ordinance, but there are definitely some communities elsewhere that are working on this already, and it's being effective, it's working effective. It also involves working with people that are in favor of using these products. And, I mean, I just want to make sure that we have a dialogue that involves everyone. But in the end, we know, and it's been proven that it, you know, some of these things do cause cancer, and they are killing our honeybee production and honey and everything else that comes with that. Honeybees are very vital to the survival of humans, and so these are all things that we need to address. We looked last week at how important water is in our valley. You know, there's so many things that make Taos, northern New Mexico, so unique. We need to work hard to preserve the Taos that we live in, and this is one of those ways.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Scully had something else to add?
I'm sorry.
I wanted to just add, this product is residual. It's not something that has a shelf life and it goes away and then everything is safe again. So it's forever.
It stays on the ground.
Yeah. Thank you.
See, that's, and with all due respect, and I know people are not going to want to hear this, but that's the way it is. I'm here to tell the truth. It does have a limited lifespan according to some of the experts that I've talked with. That's not to say, though, Mr. Neal, that there aren't problems. But there is, I mean, this is, I think, why we need some professional guidance. And I think the State's Department of Agriculture is that mechanism, since they are also the ones who will be policing this or delegating their policing responsibilities. I don't know how they want to work with it, but but I wanted to address Commissioner Gallegos, if I could, Mr. Chair. If you just Google Roundup, you'll start coming across all kinds of information. Some of it's pretty emotional and histrionic. Some of it looks like pretty good science. That being said, Tacoma, not Tacoma, Washington, it's like Takhoma, and there are other municipalities and counties out there that have created ordinances. But since there is nothing in the state of New Mexico, that leads me straight over to our attorneys to say, you know, do we even have jurisdiction? Now, Senor Vigil would say you do, but I'd like to hear it from legal. That's legal's job. So the name of that municipality again is Takhoma, something like that. A very interesting ordinance. And yes, Commissioner Romero, I think you're absolutely right. In talking with experts, believe it or not, Roundup, I've heard the allegations that it's indiscriminately, or maybe a better phrase would be field-wide sprayed, so a couple of acres just completely sprayed with this product. They would insist that that's not the case. But we don't need to quibble over that. It's really about the product, or not the product so much as the mechanism, the glyphosate aspect of it. But there are others out there. There are others out there, herbicides and pesticides and so on. And Tacoma actually addresses those. So I think Commissioner Gallego's very astute call on your part. Can we save staff? Maybe a mechanism would be, if I can respectfully suggest this, would be a couple of folks from both of our governments getting together and then giving us some advice, guidance. Maybe a handful of folks could meet with the Department of Ag, that kind of thing. There's some creative ways to go at it, but we're working so hard in town on the Rio Fernando and getting that scoping work done in the Acequia Madre and all of her laterals. It'd just be a damn shame to do all of that work and get the water running through only to find out that we're just spreading illness. So it's a real concern. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you have, or staff has talked about a joint meeting with the town anytime soon, but it would be really great to have that happen fairly soon, and this should be one of those items for discussion.
Can I just give you one more thing? I found this on the internet, and it's about the restrictions around the world and the people and the entities that have done these bans. Boulder, Colorado is listed on here. They did it in 2011. I'll be happy to leave this with you, and then you guys can click around on it and see what ones might fit with what you guys have here. Can I just hand it to you?
Yes.
Sure to take copies.
All right. Next item is item B, new business to be considered at a future commission meeting. Anybody have anything?
Well, Mr. Chairman, as far as the discussion on the Taos living treasures, and then I'd like to see the proposed ordinance on the banning of pesticides, insecticides, again on the next commission agenda.
So you want a draft ordinance by next?
No, Mr. Chairman, at least so that we can create some discussion. I know that it was kind of a short notice. I think we've gotten a lot more people in. I'm pretty sure we've gotten a lot more people in for that discussion today, if they would have known about it. The other thing, Mr. Chairman, as I know, sadly, Mr. Malone is leaving us here within the next month or so, is I would like, I'm not sure if it has to be done through executive session or not, but a list of all the cases that we have that need to be dealt with involving Taos County. I know that this is something that we do when our attorneys do leave, at least a list of all the pending cases and litigation that we still have open that we need to deal with.
I'm working on that for my own purposes anyway, so that shouldn't be too difficult. The next regularly scheduled.
And what the status is on each one of those cases.
Okay. Announcements?
Mr. Chair, maybe an update that I'd like to see from staff is the workstations at all our transfer locations, transfer stations. I'd like to see what kind of condition they're in and if there's some kind of improvements that we need to put for those locations. I passed by through Pilar, and I just kind of looked at that one, and it just kind of doesn't show a good representation for the county as far as what we want to, have our staff working in those kind of conditions. So I think that, that may help with record retention and accountability and stuff like that. I just want to kind of have real brief summary of what they look like and if there's any kind of way we can do any improvements to what there is. I don't have much.
Okay. I think these are some pictures that Commissioner O'Donnell took yesterday. Was, I understand her motivation on this. It was a nice event. It was pancakes on the plaza, sponsored by the Baroni family. There was a lot of help there, a lot of people. My best estimation was there's probably 450 plates served with pancakes, sausage, fruit. But I guess she just wanted to share all of that. She stalks me, that's why she takes all these pictures.
Who is that?
So it was a great event. My hat's off to the mayor for what he did and his family. They worked very hard, and I was honored to help them the little bit I did. Councilmember Hahn was there as well, and he helped out, and obviously one of us just stood around and took pictures. All right, it was a great event. Thank you, Mayor. Anything else, Commissioners? Item 12, motion to adjourn. I'll just leave.
So moved, Mr. Chair. I'll second, Mr. Chair.
Motion and second, clerk, call the roll.
Vice Chair Geiger?
Yes.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenship?
Yes.
Chairman Patten?
Yes. Thank you all.
Thank you.